The sound in the dark, the floorboards creak beneath your bare feet as you slip from the warmth of your buffalo hide blanket. The cabin is pitch black, darker than anything you've ever experienced in your modern life. No street lamps, no electronic hum, no distant traffic noise. Just the kind of complete darkness that swallows sound and makes your heart pound with primal fear. You are Samuel Fletcher, and it's March 1762 in the Pennsylvania wilderness. Your wife Martha sleeps fitfully beside you, one hand instinctively resting on baby Elizabeth's cradle. Your son David, barely 8 years old, shares the small loft above with his younger sister Mary. 4 souls depending entirely on your ability to keep them alive through another frontier night. Something woke you. In this life, something always wakes you. Sleep comes light when death might arrive at any moment. A lesson learned quickly by those who survived their first winter in the wilderness. Tonight it was a sound, subtle, almost lost in the natural chorus of the forest, but wrong somehow. Out of place, you reach for your Pennsylvania long rifle, feeling the familiar comfort of smooth wood and cold metal. The weapon rests against the wall by your bedside, always loaded, always ready. In the 2 years since you built this cabin, that rifle has never been more than arm's length away during the night hours. It's saved your family 3 times already, Samuel. Martha's whisper is barely audible, but you hear the tension in her voice. She's awake too, that 6th sense of frontier life telling her something has shifted in the night's rhythm. Stay with the children, you whisper back, moving toward the cabin's single window. The oiled paper that serves as glass crinkles slightly as you peer through it, but reveals nothing in the moonless night. There, the sound again. A branch snapping under weight, but wrong. Too deliberate, too careful. Deer don't move like that. Neither do most predators. This is the sound of something trying not to be heard, and failing. Your cabin sits on a slight rise, positioned deliberately to provide clear sightlines in 3 directions while backing against a steep rock outcrop that prevents approach from behind. This defensive positioning wasn't accidental. It came from hard-learned lessons recorded in the journal of your neighbor, old Pete Morrison, whose previous cabin site left him vulnerable to surprise attack. The Morrison family didn't survive their first winter. Their bones still rest beneath the collapsed timbers of their poorly positioned home. A grim reminder that location matters as much as construction in frontier survival. The night air carries scents as well as sounds, and right now you detect something that makes your blood run cold. Wood smoke. Not from your own banked fire, but from somewhere upwind. Someone else is out there, and they've been watching long enough to set up a camp. You move to your pre-planned defensive position, a corner of the cabin where you've built a small firing port disguised as a chinking gap. From here, you can observe the most likely approach routes while remaining hidden. The port was carefully angled to avoid revealing muzzle flash to anyone outside. Another detail learned from Morrison's journal. In his final entry, he wrote about how his muzzle flash gave away his position to attacking raiders. His wife found the journal clutched in his dead hands. Your defensive preparations extend far beyond the cabin itself. Over the past 2 years, you've created a system of early warning devices that would make a military engineer proud. Thin cordage, nearly invisible in daylight and completely hidden at night, stretches between trees at ankle height around your perimeter. Attached to these trip lines are small metal cups filled with pebbles, frontier burglar alarms that will clatter and ring when disturbed. Tonight, those alarms remain silent, which means either the intruders haven't reached them yet, or they're skilled enough to spot and avoid them. Neither possibility comforts you. Martha has moved to the children without a sound, her own frontier instincts sharp from 2 years of constant vigilance. She knows to keep them quiet, to be ready to grab essential supplies if flight becomes necessary, and to position herself where she can use the heavy iron skillet as a weapon if the cabin's defenses fail. The skillet might seem like a desperate last resort to modern minds, but in the hands of a determined frontier woman, it becomes a formidable club capable of crushing skulls. Your son David's head appears at the edge of the loft. At 8, he's already learned to wake silently at the first sign of trouble. His eyes find yours in the darkness, and you hold up one finger. The signal for potential danger but not immediate threat. He nods and disappears back into the loft shadows. where you know he's moving to the hidden alcove you built for just such situations. The alcove represents one of your most crucial defensive innovations. Hidden behind what appears to be a solid wall, it can shelter both children for hours if necessary. The entrance, disguised as a simple gap between logs, can only be opened from inside once the children are positioned. Food, water, and even a small chamber pot are stored within. If adults fall defending the cabin, the children might survive long enough for rescue, or at least leave bodies for Christian burial rather than becoming casualties of the wilderness. A new sound reaches your ears, the soft whinny of a horse, quickly muffled. Your own animals are secured in the small barn, positioned where you can reach them without exposing yourself to the cabin's blind spots. But this horse sound came from the wrong direction, confirming your worst fears. Multiple intruders, mounted, positioned for coordinated attack. Your mind races through the defensive scenarios you've rehearsed countless times. Single attacker. Challenge from cover fire if hostile intent is confirmed. Multiple attackers. Secure the cabin. Signal for help if possible. Prepare for siege. Unknown numbers with coordination. Prepare for the worst-case scenario. The worst-case scenario means implementing the final defensive measure you pray you'll never need. The fire plan. Hidden beneath the cabin's floor, accessible through a concealed hatch, lies a cache of materials that could turn your home into an inferno within minutes. Not to burn out attackers, but to deny them the satisfaction of taking your family alive. On the frontier, some fates are worse than death, and every adult knows when that final choice might be necessary. But you're not there yet. The night is young, your defenses are strong, and your family depends on your courage and planning. Outside, the sounds grow closer. Boots on frozen ground, the creak of leather, the metallic whisper of weapons being readied. Whatever's coming has been planned carefully, but you've been preparing for 2 years. Your cabin's construction itself represents a fortress designed to look like a simple frontier home. The logs are fitted with precision that leaves no gaps large enough for rifle barrels. Yet small firing ports are concealed at strategic points throughout the walls. The door, seemingly made from simple planks, actually consists of 3 layers with different grain directions, making it nearly impossible to break down quickly. Iron hinges, forged by your own hands, mount on the inside where they can't be removed by attackers. The roof presents your greatest vulnerability and your most innovative defense. Standard frontier cabins often fell to fire arrows shot onto their wooden shingles. Your roof, however, contains a hidden surprise. Sheets of beaten iron, salvaged from an abandoned fort, and layered beneath the wooden exterior. Fire arrows will strike metal, not wood. The weight required additional support beams, but the protection proves invaluable during the long nights when flame-tipped death might arc out of the darkness. Windows represent another critical defensive element. Your cabin has only 2, both positioned high in the walls and small enough that no human could squeeze through them. Each window can be sealed from the inside using heavy wooden shutters that fit into grooves carved into the log walls. When closed and barred, these shutters turn your cabin into a nearly impregnable fortress. Water represents the one resource that could doom your defense if compromised. Your well, dug painstakingly during the cabin's construction, sits inside the structure rather than outside where it could be poisoned or controlled by attackers. The slight reduction in living space seemed a small price for the security of knowing your water supply remains uncontaminated and accessible, even during the longest siege, as minutes stretch into what feels like hours. You begin to hope the intruders have moved on, seeking easier prey elsewhere. The frontier contains many poorly defended cabins, families who trusted to luck rather than preparation. Perhaps your visible defenses, the cleared killing field around your cabin, the sturdy construction, the obvious planning, have convinced potential attackers to look elsewhere. But then the first arrow strikes your door. The sound, a solid thunk followed by the quiver of the wooden shaft, tells you several things immediately. First, they're close enough for accurate archery. Second, they're testing your defenses rather than attempting entry. Third, this is coordinated rather than random. Someone has planned this attack carefully. "Martha," you whisper urgently. "Children to the alcove. Now." The next few minutes will determine whether 2 years of preparation and planning have been enough to keep your family alive through the night. Outside, shapes move in the darkness, and the real test of frontier survival is about to begin. The art of invisible defense. The arrow shaft protruding from your door quivers slightly in the night breeze, a wooden finger pointing at your heart. But you're not focused on the obvious threat. You're listening for the sounds that matter more. The subtle scrape of moccasins on stone, the whisper of buckskin against bark, the barely audible breathing of men trying to move silently in darkness. Your ears have become instruments of survival over 2 years in the wilderness. Most people hear only the loudest, most obvious sounds. Frontier families who live past their first winter learn to detect the whispers underneath, the displaced pebble that betrays a footstep, the unnatural pause in night bird calls that signals human presence, the wrong rhythm in wind-stirred branches that means someone is moving through the forest. Tonight, those sounds tell you there are at least 4 attackers, possibly 6. They've positioned themselves in a rough semicircle around your cabin's front and sides, staying clear of the back, where the rock outcrop makes approach impossible. This isn't random violence. It's tactical thinking that suggests either military experience or extensive raiding background. Martha has moved the children with deadly efficiency born of practice. Every month for 2 years, your family has drilled these movements. David and Mary know to grab their emergency bundles, small packs containing extra clothing, a day's food, and basic survival tools before disappearing into their hidden alcove. The bundles hang on pegs beside their sleeping area, always ready, always packed with fresh supplies. The alcove itself represents frontier engineering at its most desperate and ingenious. From outside, it appears to be solid wall. From inside, it's a space barely large enough for 2 small children, with a hidden entrance that can only be operated from within once they're positioned. You carved the hiding space yourself, working by candlelight during long winter evenings, knowing that one day your children's lives might depend on the precision of these secret inches. But the alcove is just one layer of your family's defensive systems. The invisible defenses, the ones attackers can't see until it's too late, often prove more effective than obvious barriers like thick walls or barred doors. Your tripwire system extends in 3 concentric circles around the cabin, each with different purposes. The outer ring, positioned nearly 100 yards from your walls, consists of nearly invisible fishing line strung between trees at ankle height. These lines connect to small bundles of dry twigs suspended in the canopy above. When someone trips the line, the twigs fall, silent to the intruders, but audible inside your cabin as a gentle pattering that sounds like natural forest debris. The middle ring uses different technology. Thin iron wire scavenged from abandoned settlements, strung just high enough to catch belt buckles and weapon sheaths. This wire connects to small metal objects that will clink when disturbed, quiet enough that intruders might dismiss the sound as natural, but distinct enough that trained ears inside the cabin can identify the threat's location. The inner ring represents your most sophisticated early warning system. Here, nearly invisible threads connect to actual noisemakers, small wooden clappers that will produce unmistakable alarm sounds when triggered. By the time attackers reach this inner perimeter, stealth has become impossible, and your family has precious seconds to implement final defensive positions. Tonight, the outer ring has been triggered at least twice, confirming multiple intruders approaching from different directions. The middle ring's silence suggests they've spotted and avoided those wires, a bad sign that indicates experience with such defensive measures. But the inner ring remains undisturbed, meaning they haven't yet committed to final approach. This gives you time to implement counter-surveillance measures that turn the tables on your would-be attackers. Your cabin's construction includes features that most visitors never notice. What appears to be simple chinking between logs actually conceals a series of tiny observation ports, each no larger than a rifle bore, positioned to provide complete visual coverage of your surroundings without revealing your position. These ports require no movement of shutters or doors that might alert attackers to your surveillance. Through the north-facing port, you can see movement near the tree line. A shadow detaches itself from a large oak, moves 3 steps closer to your cabin, then freezes. Excellent fieldcraft, but not perfect. The figure chose to position himself where background starlight creates a subtle silhouette. a mistake that costs him the advantage of invisibility. The east port reveals another figure, this one showing better tactical awareness. He's positioned himself in true shadow, invisible except for the occasional glint of metal that suggests a weapon held ready. This one has military training or extensive combat experience. He's the dangerous one, the one who will coordinate any assault. Your defensive positioning inside the cabin reflects months of careful planning and practice. You're not simply hiding behind walls. You've created interlocking fields of fire that turn your home into a killing box for anyone who attempts entry. The main room contains 4 prepared firing positions, each with clear lanes of fire covering different approaches, each supplied with loaded weapons and additional ammunition. The primary position, where you're currently stationed, commands the front door and main window while providing cover behind a thick log beam. Your Pennsylvania long rifle rests in a groove cut specifically for its barrel, allowing precise aim without exposing your body. A loaded pistol hangs within easy reach for close-quarters fighting. A powder horn and bullet pouch sit positioned for rapid reloading. The secondary position covers the east wall and side window, with similar arrangements of weapons and ammunition. Martha knows to move there if attackers split their assault. The tertiary position covers the cabin's rear, though the rock outcrop makes attack from that direction unlikely. The final position, located in the loft, provides oversight of the entire cabin interior and emergency coverage if ground-level defenses fail. But weapons and positions mean nothing without the most crucial element of frontier defense, field of fire preparation. Your cabin sits in the center of a clearing that extends 50 yards in every direction, not for farming or aesthetics, but for tactical advantage. Every tree, stump, and rock within that perimeter has been removed or positioned to prevent attackers from reaching cover close to your walls. This killing field forces anyone approaching your cabin to cross open ground under direct observation and potential fire. The clearing's edges aren't random either. You've left specific trees standing at calculated distances, creating natural range markers. The large maple at exactly 100 yards, the dead snag at 75. The lightning-struck oak at 50. In daylight, these markers help estimate range for accurate shooting. In darkness, they provide reference points for judging how close threats have approached. Within the cleared area, obstacles appear random but serve specific defensive purposes. A pile of rocks positioned 20 yards from your door provides no cover for attackers, but offers a perfect rest for defensive shooting. Several fallen logs, arranged seemingly by chance, channel any ground approach into predetermined lanes where your weapons can most effectively engage. The psychological effect of these preparations often proves as valuable as their tactical benefits. Experienced raiders can recognize defensive preparations, even subtle ones. A well-cleared field of fire, obviously prepared positions, evidence of systematic planning. These signs often convince attackers to seek easier targets elsewhere. Unfortunately, tonight's intruders seem committed to their assault, despite the obvious preparations. A new sound reaches your ears, the soft scrape of metal on stone. Someone is preparing weapons for attack, probably checking powder charges and adjusting flint positions. The sound comes from multiple directions, confirming coordinated action. Within minutes, the assault will begin. Martha appears at your shoulder, moving silently despite the darkness. She carries her own weapon, a shortened musket loaded with buckshot, and positions herself at the secondary firing point without words. 2 years of preparation have made communication unnecessary during crisis. Each family member knows their role, their position, their responsibilities.
Children.
You whisper, barely breathing the word. Secured, she responds just as quietly. Water and food for 2 days. This represents another crucial element of frontier defense, sustainability during siege. Your cabin's interior contains hidden caches of food, water, and ammunition positioned to remain accessible even if parts of the structure are compromised. The children's alcove has its own supplies, but the adults maintain separate emergency stores that can sustain defense for extended periods. The main cache, built into the cabin's foundation and accessible through a concealed hatch beneath Martha's spinning wheel, contains enough hardtack, jerked meat, and water to feed 4 adults for a week. Additional smaller caches are hidden throughout the structure, behind loose stones in the fireplace, beneath floorboards, even inside the walls themselves, where hollowed log sections create secret storage spaces. Ammunition storage receives similar attention. Your primary powder supply stays in a proper horn, but backup supplies are distributed in small waterproof containers throughout the cabin. Lead bullets, already cast and ready for use, fill hidden compartments near each firing position. Even if attackers penetrate part of your defenses, the remaining positions stay supplied for continued resistance. Medical supplies represent another critical preparation often overlooked by frontier families who focus only on weapons and barriers. Your cabin's medical cache contains items that could mean the difference between life and death during or after an attack. Clean linen for bandages, needle and thread for suturing wounds, willow bark extract for pain relief, and a sharp knife reserved exclusively for medical use. Martha has trained herself in basic battlefield medicine using knowledge gained from her father, who served as a company surgeon during the French and Indian War. She can extract bullets, stitch wounds, and stabilize injuries that would prove fatal without immediate treatment. This knowledge transforms her from potential victim into valuable asset during combat situations. As you maintain your vigil at the north firing port, movement in the forest suggests the final assault approaches. Shadows shift among the trees, metal gleams in starlight, and the subtle sounds of preparation grow more urgent. Your invisible defenses have provided early warning. Your defensive preparations offer tactical advantage, and your family's training ensures coordinated response. But the real test is about to begin, and 2 years of preparation will prove either adequate for survival or insufficient to prevent tragedy. The night is far from over, and the sounds outside suggest your attackers are finally ready to discover what frontier families can accomplish when they have time to prepare, determination to resist, and the knowledge that failure means death for everyone they hold dear. When the wolves come calling, the first war whoop splits the night like an axe through pine, followed immediately by the thunder of moccasined feet charging across frozen ground. Your invisible defenses have done their job, providing early warning and forcing the attackers to show their hand, but now the real battle begins. Through your north firing port, you can see 3 figures sprinting across the clearing, their approach covered by a 4th man positioned at the tree line with what appears to be a military musket. Classic infantry tactics adapted for frontier warfare. Someone among your attackers understands coordinated assault. Your Pennsylvania long rifle speaks first, the .50 caliber ball taking the lead attacker center mass and dropping him in a rolling tumble that ends in stillness. The muzzle flash illuminates the clearing for a split second, revealing details that make your blood run cold. War paint, scalping knives, and equipment that suggests this isn't random violence but organized raiding. Martha's shortened musket roars from the east firing position, its load of buckshot spreading across the night like deadly hail. One of the charging figures stumbles, crying out in pain, but continues his assault. Wounded, not stopped. The 3rd attacker reaches your cabin's wall and disappears into the blind spot beneath your main window. Now comes the most dangerous phase of frontier combat. Close quarters fighting where preparation and position matter more than marksmanship. The attacker beneath your window isn't trying to break in. He's trying to set fire to your home. The acrid smell of burning pine pitch reaches your nostrils, confirming your worst fears. Fire arrows were just the beginning. They're attempting to burn you out, forcing your family into the open where superior numbers can overwhelm your defenses. But you planned for this scenario too. Your roof's hidden iron sheeting protects against fire arrows, but walls present a different challenge. The solution came from studying the ruins of burned-out cabins throughout the region. Most fell to fire because settlers never considered flame-retardant measures during construction. Your cabin's exterior logs are treated with a mixture of clay, sand, and animal hair that creates a fire-resistant coating invisible to casual observation. The spaces between logs are chinked not just with clay, but with a mixture that includes ground limestone, a substance that actually releases fire-retardant gases when heated. These preparations won't prevent fire indefinitely, but they buy precious time for countermeasures. The countermeasures begin now. From your position at the North Port, you can't directly engage the fire setter, but your cabin's design accounts for this limitation. A system of angled mirrors, positioned during construction to reflect light between rooms, now allows you to observe the cabin's exterior blind spots from inside. The mirrors are small, concealed within what appear to be decorative elements, and positioned to avoid reflecting muzzle flashes back at defenders. Through the mirror system, you can see your attacker clearly, a painted warrior applying burning pitch to your east wall with systematic precision. He's experienced at this tactic, working from bottom to top to create maximum flame spread. But his concentration on fire setting makes him vulnerable to your next defensive measure. The boiling water trap. Above your east wall, concealed within the cabin's eaves, sits a large iron kettle maintained at constant readiness for exactly this situation. A simple rope and pulley system allows you to tip the kettle's contents onto any one position directly below. The kettle holds 3 gallons of water, kept near boiling temperature by the cabin's heating system, and fed by a pipe that runs directly from your fireplace. Martha, positioned at the east firing point, has access to the kettle's release rope. At your hand signal, she pulls. 3 gallons of near-boiling water cascades onto the fire setter, producing screams that cut through the night like wounded animal cries. The burning pitch is extinguished instantly, the immediate fire threat eliminated, and one attacker neutralized without expending additional ammunition. But the assault continues from multiple directions. The 4th attacker, the one with the military musket, has been providing covering fire from the tree line. His weapons range and accuracy suggest professional military experience, possibly British Army training. His shots are aimed not to kill, but to keep your family's heads down while his companions press their attack. Now, with 2 of his men down and the 3rd neutralized by boiling water, he faces a tactical decision: continue the assault with insufficient numbers or withdraw and regroup. Professional soldiers usually choose the tactically sound option. This attacker chooses neither. Instead, he does something that chills your frontier-hardened blood. He produces a horn and blows a complex sequence of notes into the night air. It's a signal call, and within seconds, answering calls echo from multiple directions in the surrounding forest. You're facing the advance guard of a larger force. Martha's sharp intake of breath tells you she's reached the same conclusion. The cabin's defenses are strong enough to repel 4 or 5 attackers, but not a dozen or more. The mathematics of frontier warfare are brutally simple. No position, no matter how well prepared, can withstand unlimited assault by superior numbers. Time to implement the escape plan. Every frontier cabin that survives its first year has an escape plan, but most consist of simple back doors or windows positioned for emergency exit. Your family's escape system reflects 2 years of careful engineering and reflects lessons learned from families who didn't survive their emergency evacuations. The escape route begins in your cabin's center, beneath Martha's spinning wheel, where a concealed hatch provides access to the supply cache. But the cache itself is only the beginning. Beyond the stored food and ammunition lies the entrance to a tunnel, hand-dug over 2 winters, that extends 30 yards from your cabin before emerging in a carefully concealed exit positioned behind a natural stone formation. The tunnel represents months of back-breaking labor, digging by candlelight during the long winter evenings when outdoor work became impossible. The excavated earth was carefully distributed around your property, mixed with natural soil to avoid creating obvious signs of construction. The tunnel itself is lined with logs to prevent collapse and contains air vents disguised as natural features to ensure breathable atmosphere during extended use. But the tunnel system includes more than simple escape capability. At the halfway point, a side passage branches off toward your small barn where your horses wait in pre-rigged stalls. Emergency packs already loaded with survival supplies hang ready for immediate departure. The horses themselves wear special halters designed for silent leading, with metal fittings wrapped in leather to prevent accidental noise. The escape system also includes provisions for different scenarios. If the family escapes together, everyone uses the main tunnel. If the adults fall defending the cabin, the children have their own escape route, a smaller tunnel that branches from their hidden alcove and emerges near the barn. Even if attackers overrun the main cabin, the children might survive to reach neighbors or friendly settlements. As more signal horns echo through the forest, you make the tactical decision that might save your family's lives. Martha, you whisper urgently, implement full escape. Children first, then you, then me. She nods grimly, understanding that this means abandoning everything your family has built over 2 years of frontier life. The cabin, the cleared land, the crops stored for winter, the tools and household items that represent irreplaceable wealth on the frontier, all must be left behind in exchange for the chance of survival. But frontier families who survive multiple attacks understand a harsh truth. Possessions can be replaced, lives cannot. Martha disappears toward the children's alcove while you maintain defensive positions to buy time for evacuation. Through your north port, you can see movement in the forest as additional attackers position themselves for coordinated assault. Professional tactics, superior numbers, and systematic approach suggest this isn't random raiding, but organized warfare with specific objectives. The realization hits you like physical blow. Your family isn't facing random violence, but targeted attack by enemies who have studied your defenses and planned countermeasures. Someone has been watching your cabin, noting your preparations, identifying your weaknesses. This knowledge transforms the situation from simple defense to complex tactical problem. Random raiders might be discouraged by strong defenses, but organized enemies will adapt and overcome. The escape route that seemed like adequate preparation now appears potentially compromised. If they've been watching long enough to plan counter-defenses, they may know about the tunnel, but you have no choice except to proceed with evacuation and hope your family's preparations prove adequate for survival. The sound of children moving through the tunnel reaches your ears, barely audible scratches and whispers that would be invisible to outside observers but confirm that the first phase of escape has begun successfully. Martha follows moments later, carrying the emergency supply pack and her shortened musket. Now comes your most dangerous task: covering the family's retreat while extricating yourself from an increasingly compromised defensive position. The attackers seem to sense weakening resistance, more movement in the forest, coordinated positioning, the systematic preparation for final assault. Within minutes, they'll discover the cabin's reduced defensive capability and press home their advantage. You have perhaps 3 minutes to escape before the tunnel entrance becomes a death trap instead of salvation route. But as you prepare to abandon your defensive position, one final element of your family's protection system activates automatically: the destruction protocol. Hidden throughout your cabin, positioned during construction and maintained ever since, are materials designed to deny your enemies the satisfaction of capturing your family's possessions intact. Not random destruction, but systematic denial of resources that might aid future attacks against other frontier families. The destruction system activates through a single mechanism: a fuse system connected to charges of black powder positioned at crucial structural points throughout the cabin. When triggered, the charges will bring down the roof, destroy stored supplies, and eliminate any tactical advantage the position might offer to future attackers. The fuse burns for exactly 4 minutes, time enough for escape, but not enough for enemies to prevent destruction. As you light the fuse and begin your own movement toward the tunnel entrance, you realize that your family's 2 years of preparation have provided exactly what frontier protection systems should offer: the chance for survival when overwhelming force makes defense impossible. The tunnel entrance closes above you just as the first attackers reach your cabin's walls, their triumphant war cries echoing through the night air. But they're celebrating too early. In 4 minutes, their victory will become a lesson in the price of attacking well-prepared frontier families. And in the darkness beneath the ground, your family begins the most dangerous journey of your lives. Escape through hostile territory with nothing but the supplies you can carry and the knowledge that every frontier family who survives learns eventually. Sometimes, the best defense is knowing when to run, the underground railroad to survival. The tunnel walls press close around you as you crawl through darkness that seems solid enough to touch. Behind you, the muffled sounds of attackers ransacking your abandoned cabin grow fainter with each foot of progress. Ahead, Martha's controlled breathing provides the only confirmation that your family's escape is proceeding according to plan. But frontier plans no matter how carefully crafted, rarely survive contact with reality unchanged. The tunnel you spent 2 winters digging was designed for emergency evacuation, not extended occupation. At shoulder width and barely tall enough for crawling, it becomes a claustrophobic nightmare when occupied by 4 people, emergency supplies, and weapons. The air grows thick and stale within minutes, making each breath an effort that threatens to trigger panic in the confined space. David, your 8-year-old son, begins to hyperventilate somewhere ahead in the darkness. You can hear his rapid, shallow breathing accelerating toward outright panic. In the tunnel's confines, panic becomes contagious and potentially fatal. A screaming child will compromise the entire family's position, drawing attackers to the escape route. David, Martha's voice whispers with the controlled calm that frontier mothers master through necessity. Count your breaths like we practiced. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The breathing exercises aren't random frontier folklore. They're systematic techniques Martha learned from her father, who treated soldiers suffering from battlefield panic during the French and Indian War. Combat breathing, designed to maintain function when terror threatens to overwhelm rational thought. As David's breathing gradually stabilizes, you continue the agonizing crawl toward freedom. Each yard requires careful navigation around tree roots, rocks, and occasional pockets of groundwater that have seeped through the tunnel's log lining. The escape route that seemed so clever during construction now reveals its limitations under actual use conditions. Progress halts suddenly as Martha encounters an unexpected obstacle near the tunnel's midpoint. In darkness, identification becomes a matter of touch rather than sight. Her hands explore the blockage, earth and debris that have partially collapsed one section of the tunnel's ceiling, reducing the already minimal clearance to nearly impassable dimensions. The collapse isn't complete structural failure, but rather the kind of gradual settling that occurs in hand-dug excavations over time. During construction, this seemed like a remote possibility. Now, with your family's lives depending on the tunnel's integrity, even partial collapse becomes a potentially fatal obstacle. Can we get through? You whisper, already dreading the answer. Martha's assessment is swift and professional. Children, yes. Adults, maybe. We'll have to widen it or find another way. But widening the collapse means time, noise, and the risk of further structural failure that could trap your family underground. The alternative, returning to the cabin, has become impossible. Through the tunnel walls, you can hear the distant sound of splintering wood as attackers break down your carefully constructed defenses. Then, brilliantly, Martha implements a modification to the escape plan that transforms disaster into opportunity. Instead of forcing passage through the collapsed section, she locates the side tunnel that branches toward the barn. This secondary route was intended for emergency access to your horses, but it bypasses the collapse entirely while leading to the same general destination. The side tunnel is smaller and more difficult to navigate, but structurally sound. As your family changes course through the branching tunnel system, you realize that successful frontier defense requires more than just primary plans. It demands redundancy, alternatives, and the ability to adapt when circumstances change. The tunnel system's complexity, which seemed like over-engineering during construction, now proves its value under actual emergency conditions. The side tunnel emerges inside your barn through a concealed entrance built into the floor of an unused stall. The emergence feels like resurrection, fresh air, space to stand upright, and the familiar comfort of known surroundings. But the relief is temporary. The barn represents only a way station in your family's flight, not a final destination. Your horses wait in pre-rigged stalls, already saddled and equipped with emergency supply packs. This preparation reflects lessons learned from families who attempted escape on foot and never reached safety. Frontier distances are measured in days of travel, not hours, and mounted families have survival chances that walking families lack entirely. But horses also present risks as well as opportunities. Their hoofbeats carry farther than footsteps, they require more food and water, and they can't move silently through dense forest. Most importantly, they create a trail that skilled trackers can follow for days or even weeks after passage. The decision to mount or proceed on foot depends on immediate tactical conditions. How close are the attackers? How much time does the family have? And what routes of escape remain viable? Through the barn's small window, you can see flames beginning to lick at your cabin's walls. The attackers have decided to burn what they can't carry, denying your family any possibility of return. But the flames also provide light that makes movement around the property visible from considerable distance. More concerning, you can see figures moving between your cabin and barn. Not the random movement of looters, but systematic positioning that suggests someone understands your likely escape routes. These aren't wild raiders celebrating easy victory. They're disciplined fighters implementing tactical control of the area. Professional military thinking applied to frontier warfare. The realization forces a horrible conclusion. Your family is facing organized enemies, not random attackers. This suggests broader conflict. Perhaps the regional warfare that frontier families have been dreading since tensions with French allied tribes began escalating. Individual families can defend against small raiding parties. They cannot survive organized military campaigns. Samuel! Martha's urgent whisper draws your attention to the barn's east window. Through it, you can see the glow of additional fires in the direction of your nearest neighbors. The Morrison homestead 2 miles east appears to be burning. Beyond that, another glow suggests the Patterson place has also fallen. This isn't a raid. It's a coordinated campaign designed to clear frontier families from the entire region. Your escape plan, designed for evading small groups of attackers, suddenly seems inadequate for the scope of threat your family faces. Professional military forces with coordinated objectives don't simply abandon pursuit when families escape initial attacks. They systematically hunt down survivors to prevent intelligence from reaching other settlements or military authorities. The horses suddenly represent your family's best hope for survival. But mounting requires exposing yourselves in the barn's open area, creating noise that will carry to nearby attackers, and committing to a course of action that cannot be easily reversed. Once mounted and moving, your family becomes visible, audible, and trackable, but also fast enough to potentially outrun pursuit. The decision crystallizes when you hear voices approaching the barn. Not war cries or random shouting, but controlled military communication between organized units. They're conducting systematic search of your property, and the barn is an obvious location for investigation. "Mount up!" you whisper urgently. Silent departure, northeast toward the river crossing. Your family's response reflects 2 years of preparation and practice. David and Mary, despite their youth, know exactly how to mount quietly and position themselves for extended riding. Martha secures the emergency supply packs while maintaining readiness with her shortened musket. Everyone understands that noise discipline means the difference between escape and capture. The horses themselves have been trained for silent movement, a crucial skill that many frontier families overlook. Your animals know to avoid stomping, whinnying, or making other sounds that could betray their presence. This training, conducted over months of patient work, now proves invaluable as your family prepares for desperate flight. The barn's rear door opens onto a small paddock that connects to a creek bed leading northeast toward deeper wilderness. This route was selected during your original property planning specifically for its concealment and multiple escape options. Creek beds provide natural highways that muffle hoofbeats while offering several branching paths that complicate tracking. As your family moves single file along the creek bank, the sounds of systematic destruction continue behind you. Your cabin, barn, and outbuildings are being methodically burned to deny their use to future settlers. This isn't random violence, it's military policy designed to permanently clear the region of European presence. The creek route leads toward the Susquehanna River, 20 miles northeast, through increasingly rugged terrain. At the river, your family faces crucial choices. Attempt to cross into Pennsylvania's more settled regions, or follow the watercourse south toward the string of forts that provide military protection for frontier settlements. Each option presents distinct risks and benefits. The settled regions offer safety in numbers and established communities, but require crossing open country where mounted families are visible from considerable distances. The military forts provide professional protection and communication with colonial authorities, but attract enemy attention and may already be under siege. As dawn approaches, painting the eastern sky in shades of gray that will soon become full daylight, Your family's situation becomes increasingly desperate. Daylight travel exposes mounted families to observation from miles away, but stopping means losing the head start gained through early escape. The decision point arrives at a fork in the creek where one branch leads toward the river crossing and potential safety, while the other curves back toward your burned homestead and certain danger. Logic dictates the river route, but logic doesn't account for the human factor that often determines frontier survival. Martha spots them first. Smoke rising from the direction of Fort Hunter, the military installation that should provide sanctuary for fleeing families. The smoke's color and volume suggest major fires. Either the fort is burning or it's been abandoned and destroyed. If Fort Hunter has fallen, the military protection your family counted on no longer exists. The settled regions beyond the river may be under general attack, making flight in that direction potentially suicidal. Your family might be fleeing from local danger into regional catastrophe. But remaining in familiar territory means facing certain pursuit by enemies who now control your home area. The destroyed homesteads, the coordinated attacks, the military-style tactics, all point to an organized campaign that will systematically hunt down any survivors who might carry intelligence to colonial authorities. The choice becomes stark. Risk everything on flight toward uncertain safety, or attempt to survive in known territory now controlled by hostile forces. Martha makes the decision with characteristic frontier pragmatism. We know this country better than they do. We know where to hide, where to find food and water, where to avoid patrols. Out there, she gestures toward the river crossing, we're just refugees hoping for help that might not exist. Her logic reflects hard-won frontier wisdom. Familiar territory, even when controlled by enemies, offers advantages that unknown country cannot provide. Hidden caves, concealed water sources, food caches and shelter sites that only local families know about. Most importantly, knowledge of terrain features that can be used for defense if flight becomes impossible. Your family turns away from the river crossing and potential safety, instead choosing the desperate gamble of survival in hostile territory. The decision feels like madness, but frontier families learn that survival sometimes requires choosing between different forms of desperation. As you guide your horses deeper into the wilderness your family knows intimately, you realize that the real test of frontier survival has only just begun. The systematic destruction of settlements means no possibility of rescue or resupply. Your family must now survive entirely through wilderness skills and hidden resources, surrounded by organized enemies who will methodically search every hiding place. The underground railroad to survival leads not toward safety, but deeper into danger that will test every preparation your family has made over 2 years of frontier life. The Vanishing Act, becoming invisible in plain sight. 3 days into your family's flight through hostile territory, you discover that survival depends less on running fast than on becoming invisible. The wilderness that seemed like sanctuary now reveals itself as a vast hunting ground where professional trackers systematically search for fleeing settlers. Your horses, initially the key to escape, have become dangerous liabilities. Their hoofprints create trails that skilled enemy scouts can follow for days, and their need for water forces your family toward predictable locations where ambushes wait. Most critically, mounted families cannot access the hidden refuges that offer true concealment from systematic search. The decision to abandon your horses tears at your heart. These animals represent wealth, mobility, and companions that have served your family faithfully. But frontier survival demands brutal choices, and dead families need no transportation. You lead the horses deep into a rocky ravine where their hoofprints disappear among stone surfaces, then release them to find their own survival. The animals may live or die according to their instincts, but they'll no longer betray your family's location to pursuing enemies. Now begins the most sophisticated phase of frontier concealment, transforming from visible refugees into invisible ghosts that move through enemy-controlled territory without leaving traces of passage. Though techniques your family employs reflect knowledge, accumulated through generations of frontier conflict, distilled into practical skills that mean the difference between capture and survival. Footprint discipline becomes your first priority. Every step must be planned to avoid leaving traces that trackers can follow. This means avoiding soft ground, muddy areas, and snow whenever possible. When such surfaces cannot be avoided, your family uses techniques borrowed from native scouts, stepping on rocks, fallen logs, and hard-packed areas that retain minimal impressions. Martha teaches the children to walk in single file, stepping exactly in their father's footprints to minimize the number of tracks left behind. When crossing unavoidable soft ground, the family uses fallen branches to sweep away footprints, leaving surfaces that appear naturally disturbed rather than showing human passage. But footprint concealment represents only the beginning of invisibility techniques. Your family's clothing, originally selected for warmth and durability, now requires modification for concealment. Bright colors, reflective surfaces, and regular patterns that might catch an observer's eye must be eliminated or disguised. Using mud, charcoal, and plant materials, you transform your family's appearance from obviously human to naturally camouflaged. The children learn to move through forest without disturbing vegetation in ways that create obvious human sign. Breaking branches, trampling undergrowth, and leaving bent grass all create trails that experienced trackers can follow for days after passage. Instead, your family develops movement techniques that utilize natural pathways, animal trails, stream beds, rock formations that minimize disturbance to surrounding vegetation. Food procurement becomes another exercise in invisibility. Traditional hunting methods, shooting game, building fires, establishing camps, create signs that alert enemies to your family's presence. Instead, you employ techniques that leave no traces, collecting nuts and berries that grow naturally, catching fish with improvised traps rather than hooks and lines, gathering edible plants that won't be missed from their natural locations. Fire discipline proves crucial for maintaining invisibility. Smoke columns visible from miles away have betrayed countless refugee families to their pursuers. When fire becomes absolutely necessary for warmth during freezing nights or cooking food that's inedible, raw, your family uses concealed fire, techniques learned from friendly native scouts. These hidden fires burn in carefully selected locations, beneath overhanging rocks that disperse smoke, inside hollow logs that contain flames, or in small depressions that hide light from ground-level observation. The fires use only the driest wood that produces minimal smoke and burn for the shortest time necessary to accomplish essential tasks. Water procurement requires similar attention to concealment. Approaching streams and springs during daylight exposes your family to observation from considerable distances. Instead, you locate water sources during pre-dawn darkness, approach them using maximum concealment, and carry sufficient water to avoid returning to the same location repeatedly. The children learn to recognize water-indicating signs that don't require direct approach to major streams. Morning dew patterns, vegetation changes, animal trail convergence points, and rock formation characteristics that suggest concealed springs. These skills allow your family to remain hydrated while avoiding the obvious water sources that enemy patrols monitor for refugee activity. Shelter. Construction becomes an art form that balances concealment with protection from weather. Traditional shelters, lean-tos, debris huts, even simple windbreaks create obvious human sign that trained observers can spot from remarkable distances. Your family instead develops shelter techniques that appear natural even under close inspection. The most effective shelters utilize existing natural features, hollow logs, rocky overhangs, dense vegetation clusters that provide concealment without requiring modification. When natural shelters prove inadequate, your family constructs minimal modifications that enhance protection while maintaining natural appearance. One technique involves creating false floors inside hollow logs by layering natural materials, leaves, pine needles, moss, to provide insulation and comfort without altering the log's external appearance. Another method uses natural vegetation to create concealed lean-tos that blend perfectly with surrounding forest. But physical concealment means nothing without sound discipline that prevents acoustic detection. Your family learns to move through forest without creating Sounds that alert enemies to human presence. This means avoiding stepping on twigs that snap, pushing through brush that rustles, or displacing rocks that clatter down slopes. Movement becomes deliberate, controlled, and nearly silent, even when covering considerable distances. Communication between family members develops into a system of hand signals and subtle sounds that blend with natural forest noises. Bird calls, animal sounds, and environmental audio provide cover for necessary coordination while maintaining acoustic invisibility. The children master techniques for silent movement that many adults never learn. How to place feet to minimize noise. How to move through dense vegetation without creating disturbance. How to breathe quietly even during strenuous activity. These skills, developed through desperate necessity, transform young children into surprisingly effective wilderness scouts. Most importantly, your family develops psychological techniques that support physical concealment efforts. Remaining invisible requires constant mental discipline that many refugees cannot maintain under stress. The urge to move quickly, to take chances, to reveal position through careless action becomes overwhelming when families face prolonged concealment requirements. Mental discipline often proves more challenging than physical techniques. Martha implements a psychological system that sustains family morale during the darkest moments of concealment. Regular whispered conferences that maintain communication and coordination. Simple games and mental exercises that keep children occupied during long periods of motionless hiding. Even basic hygiene maintenance that preserves human dignity when living conditions become primitive. Your family's invisibility system faces its first major test on the morning of day 4, when enemy patrol passes within 20 yards of your concealed shelter. The patrol consists of 6 warriors moving in professional formation, obviously searching for refugee sign rather than traveling toward specific destinations. Their movement patterns, search techniques, and coordination suggest extensive training in tracking human quarry through wilderness terrain. Your family's concealed shelter, a modification of natural rocky overhang using minimal additional materials, provides perfect invisibility, as long as everyone remains absolutely motionless and silent. The children, trained through necessity, control their breathing and suppress natural fidgeting that could betray the family's position. For 30 minutes, the patrol conducts systematic search of the immediate area, examining potential hiding places, looking for human sign, and coordinating their search pattern through subtle signals. Their thoroughness demonstrates professional tracking skills that would detect most concealment attempts. But your family's preparation proves adequate. The patrol passes without detecting any sign of human presence, moving on to search other areas while your family remains hidden in plain sight. The encounter provides valuable intelligence about enemy search capabilities while confirming the effectiveness of advanced concealment techniques. Your family has successfully become invisible in country crawling, with skilled enemies actively hunting survivors. But invisibility alone cannot sustain long-term survival. Eventually, your family must either escape to safety or establish more permanent sanctuary that provides shelter, food sources, and protection from winter weather that will arrive within months. The decision approaches that will determine whether your family's concealment skills prove adequate for extended wilderness survival, or whether other solutions must be found before winter makes survival impossible, regardless of concealment abilities. For now, you remain ghosts in the wilderness, present but undetectable, surviving but unseen, waiting for opportunities that may allow transition from desperate concealment to genuine safety. The art of becoming invisible has kept your family alive through the most dangerous phase of your flight. But the greater challenges of long-term wilderness survival are only beginning. Winter approaches, food sources will disappear, and enemy searches will intensify as organized. Forces realize that some settler families have successfully evaded their initial sweeps. Your family's transformation from visible refugees to invisible survivors represents a crucial evolution. But survival requires more than concealment. It demands community, resources, and hope for eventual return to normal life, all of which seem impossibly distant as you huddle in concealed shelter, listening for sounds that might signal discovery or death. The underground network on. The seventh night of your family's concealment, a low whistle echoes through the darkness, 3 short notes followed by 2 long ones. The sound could be dismissed as nightbird calls, except that no native bird species produces that exact sequence. You're hearing a human signal, and after a week of careful observation, you recognize it as friendly rather than hostile. Your response comes carefully, following protocols learned during peacetime trade with friendly native scouts. 2 short whistles, pause, 1 long. The countersign that identifies your family as settlers rather than enemies, refugees rather than threats. The figure that emerges from the darkness moves with the silent confidence of someone completely at home in wilderness conditions. He's an older man, perhaps 50, dressed in a mixture of European and native clothing that speaks of decades on the frontier. Most importantly, he carries no weapons in threatening positions and approaches with hands visible, universal frontier signals of peaceful intent. "Samuel Fletcher?" he asks quietly, using your name with casual familiarity that suggests prior knowledge of your family's situation. You nod, still maintaining defensive readiness despite the apparently friendly approach. Frontier survival demands treating all strangers as potential threats until their intentions become absolutely clear. Name's Jacob Morrison. My nephew Pete had the homestead 2 miles from yours. His voice carries the flat tones of controlled grief. "So what happened to your place? Been tracking your family for 3 days to make contact." The name Morrison triggers recognition. Pete Morrison was the neighbor whose defensive mistakes cost his family there, lives during your first winter on the frontier. This man represents the surviving branch of that family, and his presence suggests possibilities your family hadn't considered. "You're running an underground network," Martha states rather than asks. Her frontier-sharpened instincts recognizing patterns that indicate organized assistance for refugees. Morrison nods approvingly. "Smart woman. Yes, we are. There's maybe 30 families scattered through these hills, all survivors of the coordinated attacks. We're working together to create sanctuary areas and escape routes that might get people to safety. This revelation transforms your family's situation from isolated survival to participation in organized resistance. The scattered refugees haven't simply fled into the wilderness to hide. They've begun coordinating mutual aid and establishing systems that multiply individual survival capabilities. Morrison's network represents the evolution of frontier mutual aid from peacetime cooperation to wartime resistance. The same principles that created barn-raising parties and harvest assistance now support refugee families fighting for survival against organized enemies. "How many families have you helped?" you ask, still evaluating whether this opportunity represents genuine assistance or potential trap. 17 so far. Got them to safety across the river or helped them reach the fortified settlement south of here. Lost 3 families to enemy patrols. But that's better odds than people face trying to escape alone. The mathematics of frontier survival support Morrison's claim. Individual families face overwhelming odds when attempting flight through hostile territory. Organized groups with local knowledge, coordinated planning, and mutual support offer significantly better survival chances. But organization also creates vulnerabilities. A network can be infiltrated, compromised, or betrayed. Centralized assistance makes refugee families dependent on systems they don't control. The decision to join Morrison's network means trading individual flexibility for group security. Martha poses the crucial question: what do you need from us in exchange for help? Morrison's answer reflects the hard practicality of frontier mutual aid. Information, skills, and willingness to help other families when you're safely established. This network survives because everyone contributes according to their abilities. Your family's potential contributions become immediately clear. Your successful concealment techniques, advanced defensive preparations, and survival skills represent valuable knowledge that could help other refugee families. Your experience with tunnel construction, invisible alarm systems, and coordinated family defense could mean the difference between life and death for families still learning wilderness survival. The network Morrison operates on principles that transform individual survival into community resistance. Rather than scattered families competing for limited resources, the organization creates cooperation that multiplies everyone's capabilities. Information sharing represents the network's most valuable service. Morrison scouts maintain contact with multiple refugee groups, tracking enemy patrol patterns, identifying safe routes, and locating resources that individual families might never discover. This intelligence network reduces the random chance that dominates individual survival attempts. Resource coordination allows families to specialize in different survival skills rather than attempting to master everything individually. Some families focus on hunting and food procurement. Others specialize in medical knowledge and injury treatment. Still others develop expertise in concealment techniques or defensive preparations. Your family's contribution centers on defensive knowledge and concealment skills that have proven effective during 7 days of successful evasion. Morrison immediately recognizes the value of techniques that allowed a family with young children to remain undetected in country, crawling with professional trackers. We've got 12 families hiding in different locations throughout these hills, Morrison explains as he leads your family toward a concealed rendezvous point. Most of them are barely surviving, trying to learn wilderness skills while enemy patrols hunt them down. Your knowledge could help them improve their concealment and increase their survival chances. The rendezvous point reveals the sophistication of Morrison's network organization. Hidden in a natural amphitheater formed by rocky outcrops, the location provides concealment from all directions while offering multiple escape routes if discovery becomes necessary. Natural acoustic properties allow quiet conversations without sound, carrying to potential observers outside the formation. More importantly, the site shows evidence of systematic use by multiple families without creating obvious human sign that would betray the location to enemy scouts. Fire pits carved into rock surfaces disperse smoke naturally. Sleeping areas utilize natural depressions enhanced with minimal modifications. Waste disposal follows strict protocols that prevent contamination or detection. The families gathered at the rendezvous represent the full spectrum of frontier refugees. Recent arrivals still learning basic wilderness survival, experienced frontier families with advanced skills, and everything in between. Children range from infants to teenagers capable of adult responsibilities. Ages span from elderly grandparents to young adults in their prime. What unites them is shared desperation transformed into cooperative determination. These aren't random victims waiting for rescue, they're organized survivors, implementing systematic resistance against enemies who assumed scattered settlers could be easily eliminated. Your family's arrival creates immediate interest in your concealment techniques. Within hours, you're demonstrating footprint discipline, sound movement, and invisible shelter construction to families whose survival may depend on mastering these skills quickly. The knowledge transfer works both ways. Other families contribute specialized skills that enhance your own survival capabilities. Advanced hunting techniques that provide protein without creating obvious human sign, medical knowledge for treating injuries with wilderness materials. Food preservation methods that extend limited supplies. Most valuable of all, you learn about the network's escape route system. Carefully planned paths through hostile territory that lead to genuine safety rather than deeper wilderness. These routes utilize hidden supply caches, concealed river crossings, and friendly contacts who provide assistance to refugee families. Morrison explains the route system with the pride of someone who has created something remarkable under desperate conditions. We've got 3 main routes to safety. Northern path leads to Fort Hunter if it's still operating. Eastern route crosses the river into settled Pennsylvania. Southern path connects with the military road that links the chain of forts. Each route requires different preparation, offers different advantages, and presents distinct risks. The northern route provides fastest access to military protection, but requires crossing territory heavily patrolled by enemy forces. The eastern route offers access to established settlements, but involves river crossing that exposes families to observation. The southern route provides multiple options, but requires extended travel through hostile territory. Your family's choice depends on immediate tactical conditions. long-term objectives, and risk tolerance for different types of danger. But having choices, rather than simply hoping for the best while fleeing randomly, represents enormous improvement over individual survival. Attempts Morrison's network has transformed desperate flight into organized evacuation, random survival into systematic resistance, individual desperation into community cooperation. The underground railroad that operates in these wilderness hills represents frontier mutual aid adapted for wartime conditions. But networks also create responsibilities. Your family's acceptance of assistance creates obligations to help other families in turn. Knowledge shared must be reciprocated with knowledge gained. Skills learned must be taught to others who need them for survival. The network's medical capabilities prove particularly impressive. Dr. Rebecca Morrison, Jacob's daughter and a trained physician who escaped from a burned settlement to the west, has established wilderness medical protocols that save lives when professional treatment is unavailable. Her improvised hospital, concealed within a natural cave system, contains medical supplies salvaged from destroyed settlements, surgical instruments maintained in sterile condition, and pharmaceutical preparations created from wilderness plants. Most importantly, she's training other network members in medical techniques that could preserve life during emergencies. The educational system extends beyond medical training to encompass all aspects of wilderness survival. Experienced hunters teach tracking and game procurement. Former soldiers provide instruction in tactical movement and defensive positions. Mothers share knowledge about childcare under primitive conditions. Your family both contributes to and benefits from this systematic knowledge sharing. The defensive techniques that protected your homestead become teaching materials for other families. The concealment skills that enabled successful evasion provide practical instruction for refugees still learning invisibility. Most importantly, the network maintains morale and hope that individual families often lose during extended isolation. Knowing that other families face similar challenges, that systematic efforts continue to help survivors, and that eventual rescue remains possible, provides psychological support that enables continued resistance. The communication system that coordinates network activities represents sophisticated organization that rivals military operations. Coded messages, signal systems, and scheduled contacts maintain coordination while preventing enemy interception that could compromise the entire organization. Your family learns the communication protocols that enable participation in network activities. Signal recognition, message encryption, and contact schedules become part of daily routine that connects your family to broader survival efforts. But the network also reveals the scope of destruction that enemy forces have inflicted throughout the region. Dozens of homesteads burned, hundreds of families killed or displaced, entire communities eliminated in systematic campaign designed to clear European settlement from frontier territories. The intelligence gathered by network scouts paints a grim picture of coordinated military operations that extend far beyond local raids. Professional forces, well supplied and systematically organized, have implemented destruction that threatens to end frontier settlement in the region permanently. Yet the network's existence proves that complete elimination has failed. Enough families survived initial attacks to create organized resistance that provides mutual aid, coordinates escape efforts, and maintains hope for eventual return to normal life. As night deepens around the concealed rendezvous, your family makes the decision that will determine whether you remain individual survivors or become part of something larger. Organized resistance that transforms scattered victims into coordinated community fighting for survival in hostile territory. The choice commits your family to the network's success or failure, but also provides resources and support that individual survival cannot offer. In wilderness crawling with professional enemies, cooperation often means the difference between life and death. Your family's flight from random victims to organized resistance members has begun, and the underground network offers possibilities that individual concealment cannot provide. The science of staying alive, 2 weeks into your family's participation in Morrison's underground network, you discover that wilderness survival is less about courage than mathematics. Every decision becomes a calculation. Calories consumed versus calories available, energy expended versus energy preserved, risks taken versus benefits gained. Frontier families who survive extended wilderness periods master this arithmetic of life and death. Your first lesson in survival mathematics comes during a group foraging expedition led by Rebecca Morrison, Jacob's daughter-in-law and the network's expert on wilderness food procurement. Her knowledge encompasses not just what plants are edible, but when they're available, how much nutrition they provide, and how their harvest affects the ecosystem that sustains refugee families. Acorns, she explains, demonstrating processing techniques beside a concealed stream, provide more calories per pound than any other wilderness food source. But they require proper preparation or they'll poison you. The preparation process reveals the complexity behind seemingly simple survival techniques. Acorns must be shelled, ground, and leached through multiple water changes to remove bitter tannins that cause severe digestive problems. The process takes 2 days of careful work to produce flour that provides substantial nutrition. But acorns also offer strategic advantages beyond nutrition. Oak trees produce nuts inconsistently. Abundant harvests some years, minimal production others. Learning to recognize productive trees, predict harvest timing, and process nuts efficiently can mean the difference between adequate nutrition and slow starvation during winter months. Rebecca's teaching extends to dozens of wilderness food sources. Wild onions that provide essential vitamins, hickory nuts that offer protein and fat, various berries that supply carbohydrates and antioxidants. Each food source requires specific knowledge about identification, harvest timing, and preparation methods. More importantly, she teaches the ecological thinking that sustains long-term wilderness survival. Harvesting too much from one area depletes resources for future use. Taking young plants prevents reproduction that maintains food sources. Ignoring seasonal patterns leads to malnutrition during critical periods. Think like a native, she advises during advanced foraging instruction. Take only what you need, spread your harvest across wide areas, and always leave enough for the land to recover. This ecological approach reflects sophisticated understanding that many refugee families lack. Desperate people often destroy the very resources they need for long-term survival, creating cycles of scarcity that doom their efforts. Successful wilderness survival requires thinking beyond immediate needs to long-term sustainability. The network's hunting protocols demonstrate similar mathematical thinking applied to protein procurement. Rather than random hunting that might provide occasional meat, the organization coordinates hunting activities to maximize success while minimizing risk of detection by enemy patrols. Tom Patterson, a refugee from the burned homesteads west of your former property, serves as the network's master hunter. His techniques reflect decades of frontier experience distilled into systematic approaches that provide consistent results even under difficult conditions. Small game, not large, he explains during a demonstration of wilderness hunting techniques. Rabbits, squirrels, birds. They provide adequate protein without the noise and risk of hunting deer or elk. His trap and snare systems represent engineering designed for invisibility. The devices use natural materials arranged to appear random while providing effective capture mechanisms. Placement follows animal behavior patterns that ensure consistent success without creating obvious human sign that betrays refugee presence. Trap construction utilizes materials available throughout the forest. Flexible branches for springs, strong cordage made from plant fibers, triggers carved from hardwood scraps. The completed devices blend perfectly with natural surroundings while providing reliable protein sources. Most importantly, Patterson's hunting system includes protocols for processing game without creating signs that alert enemy patrols to refugee activities. Blood disposal, bone disposal, hide processing. Every aspect of meat procurement follows procedures that maintain invisibility while providing essential nutrition. The network's food preservation system reflects similar systematic thinking applied to resource management. Fresh meat spoils quickly in wilderness conditions, but properly preserved protein can sustain families through extended periods when hunting becomes impossible. Sarah Henderson, whose family escaped the coordinated attacks on the eastern settlements, demonstrates preservation techniques that extend food value far beyond fresh consumption periods. Her methods include smoking, drying, and combination treatments that create protein sources capable of lasting months without refrigeration. Smoking requires careful fire management that provides preservation benefits without creating smoke columns visible to enemy scouts. Henderson's smoking system uses concealed fire pits designed to process meat efficiently while maintaining tactical security. Drying techniques utilize natural air circulation and solar energy to remove moisture from meat, vegetables, and fruits. The process requires protection from rain and insects while maintaining concealment from potential observers. Most valuable of all, Henderson teaches combination preservation methods that maximize nutrition density while minimizing storage space. Pemmican, a mixture of dried meat, fat, and berries, provides concentrated calories in compact form that can sustain adults during extended travel or periods when fresh food becomes unavailable. Water procurement and management represent another area where mathematical thinking applies to wilderness survival. The human body requires approximately 1 gallon of water daily for basic function, but carrying water limits mobility and exposes families to risk during procurement activities. The network's water management system balances conservation with procurement to ensure adequate hydration while maintaining tactical flexibility. Natural water sources throughout the refuge area are catalogued, evaluated for safety, and incorporated into movement patterns that provide reliable access without predictable routine. Water purification techniques ensure safety without requiring equipment that refugee families might not possess. Boiling remains the most reliable purification method, but requires fuel and creates steam that might betray position. Alternative techniques include solar purification using clear containers, filtration through natural materials, and chemical treatment using materials available in wilderness conditions. Storage and transport systems allow families to maintain adequate water supplies while preserving mobility necessary for escape operations. Container selection, weight distribution, and consumption planning ensure hydration needs are met without compromising survival capabilities. Medical knowledge becomes another crucial element of wilderness survival mathematics. Injuries and illnesses that might be minor inconveniences in settled areas become potentially fatal problems when professional medical care is unavailable and mobility is essential for survival. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, Jacob's sister and a trained physician who escaped the attack on Fort Hunter, serves as the network's medical authority. Her knowledge encompasses not just treatment techniques, but prevention strategies that reduce medical problems before they become critical. Wound care in wilderness conditions requires systematic approaches that prevent infection while maintaining mobility. Dr. Morrison's protocols utilize natural antiseptics, proper cleaning techniques, and dressing materials available throughout the forest. Her teaching emphasizes prevention over treatment. Avoiding injuries is always preferable to treating them in field conditions. Disease prevention becomes especially critical when multiple families share concealed living spaces. Sanitation protocols, water safety measures, and personal hygiene standards prevent outbreaks that could compromise the entire network's survival capabilities. Most importantly, Dr. Morrison teaches family-level medical skills that allow non-professionals to handle common wilderness medical problems. Basic wound treatment, fever management, digestive problem resolution. Skills that can preserve life when professional help is unavailable. The network's shelter system reflects mathematical optimization of comfort, concealment, and resource utilization, rather than individual families creating separate shelters that multiply resource requirements and increase detection risks. The organization coordinates shelter construction that maximizes efficiency while maintaining security. Shared shelter systems utilize natural features enhanced with minimal construction to provide protection for multiple families. Cave systems, rock overhangs, and dense vegetation clusters become foundations. For concealed communities that house dozens of people without creating obvious human-sign construction techniques emphasize natural materials arranged to enhance existing features rather than creating new structures from scratch. The modifications blend seamlessly with surrounding terrain while providing essential protection from weather conditions. Most importantly, the shelter systems include defensive features that provide security as well as protection from elements. Multiple exit routes, concealed observation posts, and defensive positions transform refugee shelters into tactical positions capable of resistance if discovery becomes inevitable. The psychological component of survival mathematics proves as crucial as physical preparations. Human minds require systematic maintenance to function effectively during extended stress periods. Depression, anxiety, and despair can kill as surely as starvation or exposure when they prevent rational decision-making. The network implements psychological support systems that maintain mental health during the most challenging survival conditions. Regular social interaction, meaningful work assignments, and hope for eventual rescue provide psychological anchors that prevent mental breakdown. Entertainment and education serve therapeutic functions that extend beyond simple pleasure. Storytelling preserves cultural knowledge while providing escapism. Teaching activities give experienced adults purposeful roles while ensuring knowledge transfer to younger generations. Most importantly, the network maintains democratic decision-making processes that give everyone voice in survival planning. People who participate in determining their fate maintain better mental health than those who feel helpless and controlled by circumstances. Resource allocation mathematics require balancing immediate needs against long-term survival requirements. Consuming available food quickly might provide short-term satisfaction, but dooms long-term survival. Hoarding resources might ensure individual survival while condemning community efforts. The network implements distribution systems that ensure fair resource sharing while maintaining incentives for individual contribution. Families who contribute skills, labor, or resources receive priority access to limited supplies, but basic needs are met for all network members regardless of their contribution capability. Economic thinking applies even in survival situations. Specialization increases efficiency. Families who focus on specific survival skills become more effective than those who attempt to master everything individually. Trade relationships develop that exchange surplus from one specialty for necessities from others. Your family's specialty emerges naturally from your experience. Defensive knowledge and concealment techniques. Other families seek instruction in areas where your experience provides expertise they lack. In exchange, you receive specialized knowledge in areas where other families excel. The trading relationships that develop within the network create economic systems that improve everyone's survival chances while maintaining fairness and mutual benefit. Knowledge, skills, labor, and material goods all become currency in survival. Economy that operates without money but follows recognized principles of value exchange. After 2 weeks of intensive education in wilderness survival mathematics, your family understands that staying alive in hostile territory requires more than luck or courage. It demands systematic thinking, careful calculation, and disciplined application of techniques that optimize resource utilization while maintaining security requirements. The knowledge transforms your family from desperate refugees hoping for rescue into competent wilderness survivors capable of extended independent operation. More importantly, it provides the foundation for contributing to the network's collective survival capabilities. But winter approaches, and the mathematics of wilderness survival change dramatically when temperature drops and food sources disappear. The techniques that sustain families during favorable weather may prove inadequate for conditions that kill even experienced woodsmen. The network faces its greatest challenge, and all the survival mathematics in the world may not prove sufficient for the test ahead. When winter becomes the enemy. The first snowfall arrives on October 15th, 3 weeks earlier than expected, and heavy enough to accumulate despite relatively mild temperatures. For settled families with prepared homes, early snow represents inconvenience. For refugee families hiding in wilderness shelters, it becomes a matter of life and death. Snow transforms every aspect of wilderness survival from manageable challenge into desperate struggle. The white carpet that blankets the forest eliminates concealment advantages that allowed your family to remain hidden from enemy patrols. Footprints become impossible to hide, leaving obvious trails that lead directly to concealed shelters. Food sources that sustained the network through autumn months disappear virtually overnight. Plants that provided essential nutrition become buried under snow that may persist for months. Small game becomes scarce as animals enter winter survival modes that reduce hunting success rates dramatically. Most critically, heating concealed shelters without creating obvious smoke signatures becomes nearly impossible. The fires that seemed manageable during moderate weather now require fuel consumption rates that cannot be sustained without exposing the network's locations to enemy observation. Morrison calls an emergency gathering at the primary rendezvous site, now transformed from concealed meeting place into obvious target by surrounding snow cover. His weathered face reflects the grim calculations that every frontier survivor understands. Winter changes the mathematics of survival in ways that eliminate most options. We've got perhaps 2 weeks before the real cold sets in. He begins without preamble. After that, families who haven't reached heated shelters are going to start dying. The assembled refugees, 37 adults and 22 children from 15 families, represent everyone the network has managed to save from the coordinated attacks. Some are experienced frontier families with advanced wilderness skills. Others are recent settlers still learning basic survival techniques. All face the same brutal reality. Winter in wilderness shelters means death for the unprepared. Morrison's assessment reflects hard frontier wisdom earned through decades of experience. We need to get people to safety immediately, or prepare winter shelters that can sustain families through 4 months of severe weather. The options he outlines reveal the limited choices facing refugee families caught by early winter: immediate evacuation through established escape routes, despite increased detection risks created by snow cover. The routes that seemed feasible during autumn concealment become deadly obvious when families leave clear tracks through snow. Enemy patrols will easily identify and intercept refugee movements. Construction of winter shelters capable of sustaining families through extended cold periods. This option requires substantial resources, coordinated labor, and construction techniques that most refugee families haven't mastered. Moreover, winter shelter construction creates obvious human activity that betrays the network's locations to systematic enemy searches. Division of the network into smaller groups that attempt individual winter survival using distributed shelter systems. This approach reduces detection risks, but eliminates the mutual aid advantages that allowed the network to function effectively during more favorable conditions. Your family's experience with defensive construction makes you valuable for winter shelter planning, but also reveals the enormous challenges facing systematic preparation. The underground refuge that seemed adequate for autumn concealment becomes completely insufficient for winter survival needs. Rebecca Patterson, whose medical knowledge has become invaluable to the network, provides the clinical assessment that crystallizes the situation. Without heated shelters and adequate food supplies, we'll lose approximately half the children and elderly within 6 weeks. The adults might survive 2 months if they maintain adequate nutrition. Her calculation reflects the brutal mathematics of hypothermia, malnutrition, and disease that claim lives when human bodies cannot maintain core temperature and basic function. Children and elderly people succumb first, but healthy adults follow shortly afterward when calorie requirements exceed available food supplies. The network faces a cruel choice: attempt dangerous evacuation that might save some families while exposing others to certain death, or undertake winter shelter construction that might sustain everyone but could reveal the entire group to enemy forces. Morrison presents the third option that reflects frontier pragmatism at its most desperate. We split up. Smaller groups have better survival chances and create less obvious targets for enemy operations. The decision to divide the network breaks the mutual aid system that enabled collective survival, but potentially increases individual family survival rates by reducing resource competition and detection risks. Smaller groups can utilize concealed shelters that would be inadequate for larger communities. Your family faces the agonizing choice between continued cooperation that provides mutual support and individual action that offers tactical advantages. The decision will determine not just your own survival odds, but your contribution to the survival efforts of other refugee families. Martha presents the argument for maintaining network cooperation. Together, we have skills and resources that none of us possess individually. Separating reduces everyone's survival chances. Her assessment emphasizes the knowledge sharing that has enabled families to learn essential wilderness skills in abbreviated time periods. The medical expertise, hunting knowledge, shelter construction, capabilities, and food procurement techniques that sustain the network cannot be effectively divided among smaller groups. But the counter-argument is equally compelling. David, now seasoned beyond his 8 years by weeks of wilderness survival, observes, smaller groups make less noise, need less food, and can hide in places that won't work for big groups. His frontier sharpened, instincts recognize tactical realities that adult emotions might overlook. The concealment techniques that proved effective for individual families become inadequate when applied to large groups with diverse capabilities and requirements. The decision crystallizes when enemy patrol activity intensifies in response to obvious signs that refugee groups operate in the area. Snow cover that eliminated concealment advantages for hiding families also reveals movement patterns that intelligent enemies can analyze and predict. Enemy scouts discover the primary rendezvous site within days of the first snowfall, forcing immediate evacuation that scatters the network into smaller survival groups operating independently. Your family joins with the Hendersons and Dr. Morrison, 9 people total, forming a group small enough to utilize concealed winter shelters, but large enough to maintain essential skill diversity. The decision represents compromise between individual flexibility and collective capability. The site chosen for winter survival sits 3 miles deeper into the wilderness, in a natural depression surrounded by rocky outcrops that provide both concealment and wind protection. Most importantly, the location offers access to a concealed spring that remains unfrozen even during severe cold periods. Winter shelter construction becomes a race against weather that grows more severe each day. The techniques required differ dramatically from the concealed summer shelters that sustained refugee families during autumn months. The foundation shelter utilizes a natural cave system, expanded and modified to accommodate 9 people while maintaining concealment from external observation. The cave's natural stone walls provide insulation impossible to achieve with constructed shelters, but require extensive modification to become habitable. Expansion work must be conducted carefully to avoid creating obvious signs of human activity. Rock debris gets distributed throughout the surrounding area, mixed with natural stone fall to avoid suspicious concentrations. Tool marks on stone surfaces are disguised using techniques that make modifications appear natural. The cave's entrance receives particular attention, transformed from obvious opening into concealed access point that appears natural even under close inspection. A false stone wall, constructed using carefully fitted rocks and natural mortar, creates concealment that can be opened from inside but appears solid from outside. Ventilation becomes critical for shelters designed to house multiple people through extended periods. Carbon dioxide buildup, smoke accumulation, and humidity control all require engineering solutions that function without revealing shelter locations. The ventilation system utilizes natural chimney effects created by connecting the main cave to smaller openings positioned higher on the rocky slope. Air circulation occurs naturally, drawing fresh air through lower openings while exhausting stale air through concealed upper vents. Fire management in winter shelters represents the most challenging aspect of concealed survival. Families require heat for warmth, cooking, and psychological comfort. But fires create smoke signatures visible from considerable distances during winter months. The heating system developed for your group's winter shelter reflects sophisticated engineering designed to provide essential warmth while maintaining tactical security. The fire chamber, carved into solid rock at the cave's deepest point, incorporates multiple air channels that cool smoke before it reaches external vents. The cooling process occurs through a series of stone chambers that allow smoke to release heat into surrounding rock mass before exiting through concealed openings. The external smoke appears as natural thermal venting rather than obvious combustion signature. Fuel procurement becomes another critical challenge that requires systematic planning to avoid detection. Traditional wood gathering creates obvious signs of human activity: cut stumps, scattered sawdust, drag marks from moving heavy logs. The fuel system utilizes deadfall collection techniques that gather firewood without creating human sign. Dead branches, fallen trees, and naturally broken wood provide adequate fuel without requiring cutting activities that betray human presence. Most importantly, fuel collection follows strict protocols that distribute gathering activities across wide areas, preventing concentration of collection sign in any single location. Multiple family members gather small amounts from different areas rather than individuals, collecting large quantities from nearby sources. Food storage for winter survival requires preserving enough nutrition to sustain 9 people through potentially 4 months of severe weather. When hunting becomes difficult and plant foods disappear entirely, the storage system utilizes natural refrigeration provided by cave temperatures that remain constant throughout winter months. Root vegetables, preserved meats, dried fruits, and processed nuts fill concealed storage areas carved into stone walls. Food preservation techniques become crucial for maintaining nutrition without spoilage. Smoking, drying, fermentation, and combination methods preserve food value while preventing waste that could doom survival efforts. Most critically, food rationing protocols ensure adequate nutrition distribution throughout the winter period. Daily calorie requirements, nutritional balance, and resource allocation receive careful calculation to prevent malnutrition while avoiding waste. Water management in winter conditions presents unique challenges when surface sources freeze and procurement activities might reveal shelter locations. Through track patterns in snow, the spring that determined your shelter location provides reliable water access throughout winter months, but requires concealed approach routes that don't create obvious paths leading directly to your hiding place. Water collection follows protocols that vary approach routes, collection timing, and container methods to avoid establishing patterns that systematic enemy searches might detect. Different family members use different approaches at different times to prevent track concentration. Most importantly, water storage within the shelter provides reserves that reduce procurement frequency while ensuring adequate hydration for all family members throughout extended cold periods. As winter deepens and temperatures plummet well below freezing, your small group's survival system faces testing that reveals whether months of preparation prove adequate. For the challenges ahead, the concealed shelter maintains adequate warmth through systematic fire management and natural insulation. Food supplies provide essential nutrition through careful rationing and efficient preparation. Medical protocols prevent minor problems from becoming critical threats. Most importantly, the group dynamics remain stable through psychological techniques that maintain morale during the darkest months of wilderness survival. Shared responsibilities, mutual support, and coordinated activities prevent the depression and conflict that destroy many isolated groups during extended crisis periods. But outside the concealed shelter, enemy patrols continue systematic searches for survivor groups, and the snow that complicated your concealment also reveals movement patterns that persistent enemies might eventually interpret. Winter survival has only begun, and the cold months ahead will determine whether your family's refuge proves adequate for the ultimate test of frontier survival. Staying alive when nature itself becomes the enemy. The psychology of survival. By February, 3 months into your family's winter concealment, you discover that staying alive becomes less about physical hardships than mental endurance. The cave shelter keeps everyone warm and dry, food supplies remain adequate, and medical problems stay manageable. But the psychological pressure of extended isolation with constant threat of discovery tests human endurance in ways that physical deprivation cannot match. The cave that seemed spacious during construction now feels confining when 9 people occupy it continuously for months. Personal space becomes non-existent, privacy impossible, and minor personality conflicts amplify into major tensions that threaten group survival. David, your 80-year-old son, has grown silent and withdrawn, spending hours staring at the cave walls without speaking. Mary, his younger sister, has developed nervous habits that manifest as constant fidgeting and sleep disruption. Both children show signs of psychological stress that could escalate into serious mental health problems. Martha recognizes the symptoms from her experience with families who survived extended frontier sieges during previous conflicts. Isolation, psychosis, cabin fever, and depression represent threats as dangerous as enemy patrols or winter weather. Families can die from psychological breakdown, even when their physical preparations prove adequate. Dr. Morrison's medical knowledge extends to mental health, challenges that arise during extended survival situations. Her protocols for maintaining psychological stability reflect understanding that human minds require systematic care just as human bodies need nutrition and medical attention. Routine becomes critical, she explains during one of her informal psychology sessions. Human minds need structure, purpose, and predictable patterns to maintain stability during crisis periods. The daily routine she implements provides psychological anchors that prevent mental drift toward depression and despair. Morning hygiene rituals, meal preparation activities, educational sessions, and evening discussions create structure that gives each day meaning beyond simple survival. Educational activities serve multiple purposes beyond preventing boredom. Teaching children reading, writing, and mathematics maintains their intellectual development while providing purposeful activity that occupies mind and time. Adult education sessions share skills among group members while creating social interaction that combats isolation. Most importantly, the educational system maintains hope for future beyond immediate survival. Planning for spring activities, discussing long-term goals, and maintaining connection to life beyond the cave prevents the psychological surrender that kills families, even when their physical resources remain adequate. Work assignments provide another crucial element of psychological stability. Everyone, regardless of age, has specific responsibilities that contribute to group survival. Children maintain firewood supplies, adults handle complex tasks, and elderly members contribute knowledge and wisdom that support group decision-making. The work system creates sense of purpose that transcends simple existence. Contributing to group survival provides psychological satisfaction that mere consumption cannot offer. People who feel useful maintain better mental health than those who see themselves as burdens. Most critically, the work assignments rotate regularly to prevent boredom and provide variety that stimulates mental engagement. Cooking duties, security watch, maintenance tasks, and educational responsibilities change hands according to schedules that ensure everyone develops multiple skills. Social interaction protocols prevent the conflicts that can destroy small groups during extended isolation. Dr. Morrison implements communication rules that require respectful discussion of differences, fair resolution of disputes, and systematic approaches to group decision-making. Privacy becomes precious commodity in confined spaces, but complete privacy is impossible. The protocols create semi-private spaces and time periods when individuals can withdraw from group interaction without completely isolating themselves from mutual support systems. Conflict resolution becomes an essential skill when disagreements arise in confined spaces with no possibility of physical separation. The techniques Dr. Morrison teaches focus on addressing problems before they escalate while maintaining group cohesion necessary for survival. Physical exercise represents another crucial element of psychological maintenance during extended confinement. Bodies that remain inactive for months develop both physical problems and mental depression that can become fatal during survival situations. The exercise system, developed for cave confinement, utilizes available space for movement activities that maintain physical fitness while providing psychological benefits of activity. Simple calisthenics, stretching routines, and movement games prevent the physical deterioration that leads to mental decline. Most importantly, group exercise activities provide social interaction and shared accomplishment that strengthen group bonds while maintaining individual health. Physical activity releases psychological tension that builds up during extended confinement periods. Entertainment and recreation seem like luxuries during survival situations, but they provide psychological necessities that prevent mental breakdown. Human minds require stimulation, creativity, and joy to maintain healthy function, even during the most desperate circumstances. The entertainment system utilizes resources available within the cave environment. Storytelling that preserves family history and cultural knowledge. Simple games that can be played with improvised materials. Music and singing that lift spirits and strengthen group bonds. Creative activities provide particular psychological benefits during survival situations. Carving, weaving with available materials, and other craft activities give people a sense of creating something beautiful despite desperate circumstances. Most importantly, humor and laughter receive systematic cultivation as psychological medicine that maintains group morale during the darkest periods. Finding reasons to laugh, sharing amusing stories, and maintaining lightness of spirit provide resilience that pure determination cannot achieve. Religious and spiritual practices offer another foundation for psychological stability during extended crisis. Whether formal religious observance or informal spiritual reflection, these practices provide comfort, hope, and meaning that transcend immediate survival concerns. The spiritual element need not be traditionally religious. It can encompass any practice that connects individuals to purposes and values beyond immediate physical needs. Meditation, prayer, philosophical discussion, or simple appreciation for natural beauty all serve similar psychological functions. Most importantly, spiritual practices provide hope for future beyond current suffering. Belief that current hardships serve larger purposes, that better times will come, and that individual survival contributes to meaningful goals provides psychological strength that enables endurance. Memory exercises become crucial for maintaining mental sharpness during periods when external stimulation is limited. The human brain requires active use to maintain optimal function, and isolation environments provide insufficient natural stimulation. Dr. Morrison implements memory training that serves multiple purposes: maintaining cognitive function, sharing knowledge among group members, and providing mental activity that prevents deterioration. The exercises range from simple recall games to complex problem-solving challenges. Knowledge. Sharing through memory exercises also preserves information that could be lost if individual group members become incapacitated. Medical knowledge, survival techniques, family histories, and practical skills all become part of collective memory that strengthens group capability. Most importantly, the memory exercises maintain intellectual engagement that prevents mental stagnation. Minds that remain active and challenged maintain better function than those that simply endure without engagement. Planning and goal-setting activities provide psychological bridges between current survival and future prosperity. Human minds need reasons to continue surviving, and those reasons must extend beyond simple existence to meaningful objectives. The planning sessions address both short-term objectives, surviving until spring, escaping to safety, reuniting with other family members, and long-term goals that provide motivation for continued effort. Rebuilding homes, establishing new settlements, and creating better lives for children all serve as psychological anchors. Most importantly, the planning activities maintain connection to identity beyond survival. People need to remain farmers, craftsmen, parents, and community members even when current circumstances reduce them to simple survival status. Communication with the outside world, when possible, provides crucial psychological support that maintains hope and connection to life beyond immediate survival. Even minimal contact with other survivor groups or friendly contacts provides enormous psychological benefits. The communication systems developed for cave concealment utilize minimal risk methods. Coded messages left at concealed locations, visual signals that appear natural, and contact protocols that don't compromise shelter security. Most importantly, knowledge that other survivor groups continue operating provides hope that current isolation is temporary rather than permanent. Understanding that larger survival efforts continue beyond individual group circumstances provides psychological strength that isolation cannot maintain. The psychological toll of constant vigilance creates another challenge that requires systematic management. Minds that remain alert for danger over extended periods suffer exhaustion that impairs judgment and decision-making. Rest becomes essential not just for physical recovery, but for mental restoration. The watch rotation system addresses psychological as well as physical needs. Individuals who maintain security watch for specific periods can relax psychological vigilance during off-duty times. Knowing that others assume responsibility for danger detection allows mental rest that prevents psychological burnout. Sleep management becomes crucial for maintaining psychological stability when normal sleep patterns become impossible. Cave living disrupts natural circadian rhythms, while stress and hypervigilance interfere with restful sleep. The sleep protocols address both individual and group needs. Quiet hours, comfortable sleeping areas, and relaxation techniques help individuals achieve restorative sleep. Group sleeping arrangements balance privacy needs with security requirements while maintaining warmth. Efficiency. Stress management techniques help individuals cope with psychological pressure that builds during extended survival situations. Simple breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation, and mental distraction methods provide tools for managing anxiety and fear that threaten mental stability. The psychological preparation also addresses traumatic stress that results from witnessing violence, losing homes and possessions, and facing constant threat of death. Post-traumatic stress symptoms can develop even during ongoing trauma, creating psychological problems that interfere with survival. Capabilities. Dr. Morrison's trauma protocols help group members process psychological wounds while maintaining function necessary for continued survival. The techniques focus on preventing psychological injury from becoming permanent disability while preserving mental resources needed for group survival. As winter begins to show signs of eventual end, longer days, occasional warmer periods, signs of approaching spring, psychological preparation for transition becomes crucial. Minds adapted to survival routine must prepare for return to more normal existence. The transition planning addresses both practical concerns, where to go, how to rebuild, what resources will be available, and psychological adjustments necessary for resuming normal life after months of pure survival focus. Most importantly, the psychological foundation built during survival months must transform into strength for rebuilding rather than weakness that cannot adapt to changing circumstances. The mental discipline that enabled survival must become foundation for renewed prosperity. Your family's psychological survival through winter isolation demonstrates that human minds, like human bodies, can endure remarkable hardships when provided with systematic support and purposeful activity. The techniques that maintained mental health during the worst periods now provide foundation for successful transition to whatever comes next. Spring approaches, and with it the possibilities that have sustained hope through the darkest months of frontier survival. The art of war, turning defense into offense. March winds bring the scent of melting snow and the promise that winter's grip on the wilderness is finally loosening. But the approaching spring also brings a strategic revelation that transforms your family's situation from passive survival to active resistance. The enemy forces that drove you from your homestead are not invincible giants, but mortal men operating far from their own supply bases and facing the same harsh conditions that tested your family's endurance. The intelligence arrives through Morrison's network, now scattered but still communicating through concealed message systems. Enemy camps throughout the region show signs of severe winter losses. Desertion, disease, and supply shortages have reduced the coordinated military force that seemed overwhelming during autumn attacks. More importantly, Enemy morale has deteriorated through months of unsuccessful pursuit. Professional soldiers recruited for quick campaigns against scattered settlers didn't expect prolonged operations in hostile wilderness. Many have abandoned their posts, seeking easier opportunities elsewhere. Dr. Morrison's medical knowledge provides crucial insight into enemy vulnerabilities. Armies that remain in field conditions through entire winters suffer predictable problems. Malnutrition, disease, and exposure reduce combat effectiveness dramatically. The revelation that your enemies face similar survival challenges creates strategic opportunities that didn't exist during initial attacks. Instead of overwhelming force pursuing helpless victims, the situation has evolved into symmetrical conflict between survival-hardened opponents. Your cave's location provides perfect observation of enemy movement patterns through the valley that contains your burned homestead. Daily reconnaissance reveals information about patrol schedules, supply routes, and defensive weaknesses that could be exploited by coordinated resistance operations. The reconnaissance activities begin as simple intelligence gathering but gradually evolve into active harassment that disrupts enemy operations while building confidence among surviving settler families. Small actions produce significant results when properly planned and executed. The first resistance operation targets an enemy supply cache discovered during routine scouting. The cache, positioned in a concealed location 2 miles from the main enemy camp, contains ammunition, food supplies, and equipment essential for continued operations. The operation requires sophisticated planning that balances maximum damage with minimum risk of retaliation. Success means disrupting enemy capabilities while maintaining concealment of your family's location. Failure could bring devastating response against your winter shelter. The attack plan utilizes guerrilla warfare principles adapted for frontier conditions. Small teams moving silently through familiar terrain, striking quickly against vulnerable targets, then disappearing before organized response can develop. Your family's contribution centers on intimate knowledge of local terrain that provides tactical advantages against enemies unfamiliar with the area. Hidden approaches, concealed positions, and escape routes known only to longtime residents become decisive factors in resistance operations. The supply cache destruction succeeds completely, eliminating resources that would have sustained enemy operations for weeks while leaving no evidence that reveals resistance capability or location. The explosion appears to result from accidental fire, providing perfect concealment for deliberate sabotage. More importantly, the successful operation demonstrates that organized resistance can achieve significant results against enemies who previously seemed invincible. Psychological victory proves as valuable as material damage in building confidence for expanded operations. The success attracts other survivor groups who had remained hidden throughout winter months. Families emerge from concealed shelters, eager to contribute to resistance operations that offer alternatives to passive survival while enemies occupy their territory. Morrison coordinates the expanding resistance network using communication systems that maintain security while enabling coordination. Signal codes, concealed message drops, and rotating meeting locations provide organizational structure without creating vulnerable central targets. The resistance organization reflects military principles adapted for civilian implementation. Cell structure prevents compromise of entire networks when individual groups are discovered. Specialized roles assign families to tasks that match their capabilities and resources. Your family's expertise in defensive construction and concealed installations makes you valuable for developing permanent resistance infrastructure. Hidden supply caches, concealed observation posts, and fortified positions that support extended operations rather than simple survival. The infrastructure development requires sophisticated engineering that creates military capabilities using civilian resources. Workshops for weapon maintenance, medical facilities for treating wounded, and communication centers for coordinating operations. Most importantly, the infrastructure must remain invisible to enemy reconnaissance while providing full capability for resistance operations. The concealment techniques that enabled winter survival now serve military purposes that support active operations against occupying forces. Weapons procurement becomes critical for resistance operations that require more firepower. than hunting rifles and farming implements can provide. Professional military operations need professional military equipment obtained through systematic acquisition, rather than random opportunity that the weapons acquisition system targets enemy equipment through carefully planned raids that capture military supplies without triggering massive retaliation. Small-scale operations that accumulate significant capabilities over time while maintaining operational security. Ammunition production becomes particularly crucial for extended resistance operations. Factory-produced cartridges are expensive and difficult to obtain, but reloading techniques can maintain firepower using improvised materials and salvaged components. Your family's experience with precision metalworking enables ammunition production that sustains resistance operations without dependence on external supply sources. Lead bullets cast from available materials, gunpowder mixed from component chemicals, and percussion caps manufactured using improvised techniques. Intelligence gathering evolves from simple observation to systematic espionage that provides detailed information about enemy plans, capabilities, and vulnerabilities. Professional intelligence operations that support tactical planning and strategic decision-making. The intelligence system utilizes human sources, visual observation, and communication interception to create comprehensive understanding of enemy operations. Network assets positioned throughout the region provide information that enables coordinated resistance planning. Most importantly, intelligence analysis identifies high-value targets that could cripple enemy operations if successfully attacked. Command personnel, communication facilities, and critical supply routes that represent vulnerabilities in enemy organizational structure. The first major resistance operation targets enemy leadership during a planned inspection of occupied settlements. Intelligence indicates that senior commanders will travel through your area using predictable routes at known times. The ambush operation requires coordination between multiple resistance cells positioned along the travel route. Timing, communication, and escape coordination must function perfectly to achieve success while preventing devastating retaliation against civilian populations. Your family's position provides overwatch for the primary ambush site, using advanced marksmanship skills developed during frontier defense to provide precision fire support. The Pennsylvania long rifle that defended your homestead now serves offensive operations against occupying forces. The ambush succeeds beyond expectations, eliminating key enemy leadership while capturing intelligence documents that reveal broader strategic plans. Most importantly, the operation demonstrates resistance capability that transforms scattered survival groups into organized military force. The success attracts additional families and individuals who contribute specialized skills that enhance resistance capabilities. Former soldiers provide military expertise. Craftsmen offer manufacturing capability, and medical personnel enable advanced care for wounded resistance fighters. The growing organization requires systematic structure that maintains security while enabling effective operations. Military chain of command, specialized training programs, and operational security protocols that protect resistance networks while supporting expanded activities. Your family's role evolves from simple survivors to key contributors in organized resistance that threatens enemy occupation throughout the region. The defensive knowledge that enabled survival now supports offensive operations that could restore settler control over frontier territory. But military success also brings increased enemy attention and response. Professional military forces don't ignore effective resistance. Indefinitely, they adapt their tactics and increase their commitment to eliminating organized opposition. The resistance faces the challenge of maintaining momentum while avoiding retaliation that could destroy everything achieved through months of careful development. Success brings both opportunity and danger that must be managed through sophisticated strategic planning. Training programs become essential for transforming civilian survivors into effective military fighters. Basic combat skills, tactical movement, weapons proficiency, and field medicine all require systematic instruction that builds capability while maintaining operational security. Your family contributes to training through expertise in defensive construction, concealment techniques, and family-level tactical coordination. The knowledge that enabled survival in desperate circumstances now helps other families prepare for active resistance operations. The training emphasizes practical skills over military theory, focusing on techniques that civilian fighters can master quickly while remaining effective against professional opponents. Marksmanship, camouflage, field communications, and basic medical care receive priority attention. Most importantly, the training addresses psychological preparation for combat operations. Taking human life requires mental conditioning that civilian families rarely possess. The resistance must prepare fighters psychologically as well as tactically for the demands of warfare. Logistical systems become crucial for sustaining resistance operations over extended periods. Food supply, medical supplies, ammunition, and equipment all require systematic procurement, storage, and distribution that maintains security while supporting operations. The logistical network utilizes the same concealment and distribution techniques that enabled winter survival. Scaled up to support military operations, hidden caches, secure transportation routes, and decentralized storage prevent enemy interdiction while maintaining capability. Economic systems develop that support resistance operations through resource allocation and production coordination. Families contribute materials, labor, and specialized skills according to their capabilities, while receiving support for their basic survival needs. The economic coordination transforms individual survival efforts into collective capability that multiplies everyone's effectiveness. Specialization, trade relationships, and systematic production create military-industrial capability using civilian resources and frontier ingenuity. As spring advances and winter's protection disappears, the resistance organization must evolve from concealed survival network into effective military force capable of sustained operations against professional enemies who now recognize the threat and will respond accordingly. The transformation from victims to victors has begun, but victory requires more than successful operations. It demands strategic thinking that ensures resistance. Success doesn't become resistance destruction through enemy countermeasures that eliminate everything gained through months of careful work. Your family's journey from desperate survival to military leadership continues, and the next phase will determine whether frontier families can transform from victims of violence into architects of victory. The Science of Revenge. By late spring, your family's transformation from desperate refugees to hardened resistance fighters is complete, but the evolution brings moral complexities that frontier survival never required. The same systematic thinking that enabled winter survival now serves planning operations that will deliberately end human lives. The mathematics of warfare prove far more brutal than the arithmetic of staying alive. The resistance network has grown to encompass 43 families and individuals scattered across the region, coordinating through communication systems that rival military intelligence operations. What began as mutual aid for survival has evolved into sophisticated military organization capable of sustained campaign against occupying forces. Your family's role has expanded beyond simple participation to strategic planning that utilizes intimate knowledge of local terrain and population. The defensive preparations that protected your homestead now inform offensive operations that exploit enemy vulnerabilities while maintaining operational security. The moral weight of this transformation becomes clear during planning sessions where discussion centers on killing efficiently rather than surviving desperately. The psychological preparation required for deliberate violence differs fundamentally from the defensive readiness that characterized frontier protection. Dr. Morrison addresses the psychological challenges during what she calls combat preparation sessions, discussions that help resistance members understand and cope with the mental demands of warfare. Her medical knowledge extends to psychological trauma that results from inflicting violence as well as receiving it. Taking human life changes you permanently, she explains during one session. Even when morally justified, even when absolutely necessary, the act leaves psychological scars that require understanding and management. The psychological preparation includes techniques for maintaining moral clarity during combat operations, understanding the difference between justified military action and personal revenge. Recognizing when tactical objectives have been achieved versus when emotional satisfaction demands continued violence. Most importantly, the preparation addresses post-combat psychological processing that prevents mental breakdown when normal moral consciousness reasserts itself after military operations. The mind must reconcile killing with personal values in ways that preserve sanity while maintaining operational effectiveness. The first major operation, planned by the expanded resistance, involves simultaneous attacks against 3 enemy outposts that control key transportation routes through the region. Success would effectively end enemy control over settler territory while demonstrating resistance capability that could attract additional support from colonial authorities. The operation requires coordination between multiple resistance cells, precise timing, and sophisticated intelligence about enemy strengths and defensive preparations. Most importantly, it demands operational security that prevents enemy discovery of planning or preparation activities. Your family's contribution centers on detailed reconnaissance of the primary target, a fortified position, controlling the main river, crossing that enemy forces use for supply operations. The intelligence gathering requires weeks of systematic observation that maps defensive positions, identifies personnel patterns, and locates vulnerabilities. The reconnaissance reveals both opportunities and challenges that characterize asymmetric warfare between professional soldiers and civilian resistance. Enemy defensive preparations reflect military engineering designed to repel conventional attacks, but create vulnerabilities that guerrilla tactics can exploit. The fortification's water supply comes from a spring located outside the defensive perimeter, requiring daily procurement that exposes personnel to ambush. Food supplies arrive on predictable schedules using routes that could be interdicted. Communications depend on messenger services that operate according to patterns that systematic observation can identify and exploit. Most importantly, enemy morale appears low among personnel who expected rapid victory, followed by return to more comfortable assignments. Extended frontier service has created discipline problems, desertion rates, and general dissatisfaction that could be exploited through psychological warfare. The attack plan utilizes multiple coordinated elements that maximize damage while minimizing resistance casualties. Diversionary attacks draw defenders away from primary objectives. Sabotage operations eliminate key capabilities before direct assault begins. Psychological warfare demoralizes enemy personnel, while encouraging surrender rather than desperate resistance. Your family's specific assignment involves eliminating enemy sentries, using silent techniques that prevent alarm from alerting main defensive forces. The mission requires infiltration skills, silent movement, and psychological preparation for close quarters, killing that differs fundamentally from long-range combat. The psychological preparation for silent killing proves more challenging than learning physical techniques. Taking human life at close range, seeing the results of violence clearly, and maintaining operational effectiveness while experiencing normal human revulsion requires mental conditioning that frontier life never demanded. The training includes techniques for managing fear, controlling physical reactions, and maintaining focus during extreme stress. Most importantly, it addresses psychological processing of violent action that enables continued function while preserving essential humanity. The operation begins at dawn with coordinated attacks against all 3 targets. Your family's infiltration of the primary fortification succeeds completely. 5 sentries eliminated without alarm, enabling main assault force to achieve complete surprise against unprepared defenders. The resistance victory exceeds all expectations. All 3 enemy positions captured with minimal resistance casualties, while enemy losses include their senior commander, critical intelligence documents, and substantial military equipment that enhances resistance capabilities for future operations. More importantly, the psychological impact transforms the strategic situation throughout the region. Enemy forces that previously operated with confidence now face systematic military opposition that threatens their continued occupation. Settler families who remained hidden begin emerging to support active resistance rather than passive survival. But military success also brings moral complications that survival never required. Enemy prisoners require decisions about treatment, execution, or release that have strategic implications beyond immediate humanitarian concerns. Intelligence documents reveal information about enemy families and civilian populations that humanize previously anonymous opponents. The prisoner situation crystallizes the moral evolution from survival to warfare. Surviving families protected themselves against threats without concerning themselves with enemy welfare. Military organizations must decide how prisoners will be treated according to standards that affect organizational character and strategic objectives. Morrison addresses the prisoner issue during command meetings that reveal the complexity of civilian resistance evolution into military organization. How we treat prisoners determines what kind of people we become through this war. Military necessity must be balanced against moral principles. The decision to establish prisoner protocols that exceed minimum military standards reflects understanding that resistance organizations must maintain moral authority that distinguishes them from the enemy forces they oppose. Treating prisoners humanely becomes strategic as well as moral imperative. The intelligence documents captured during the operation reveal broader enemy strategy that includes planned summer campaigns against remaining settler populations. The information provides strategic warning but also moral obligation to protect civilian populations. Beyond the immediate resistance network, the broader responsibility transforms resistance objectives from simple territory recovery to protection of all settler populations threatened by enemy military operations. Success requires expanded capabilities and strategic thinking that extends beyond local concerns to regional defense. Your family's role continues evolving from local participants to strategic planners whose knowledge and experience inform resistance operations throughout an expanding area. The survival skills that enabled winter endurance now support military planning that could determine outcomes for thousands of frontier families, but expanded responsibilities bring increased dangers that extend beyond immediate military risks. Success makes resistance leaders targets for enemy operations designed to eliminate effective opposition through assassination, infiltration, or other techniques that exploit civilian vulnerabilities. Personal security becomes as important as operational security for resistance members whose continued survival affects organizational capability. The concealment techniques that enabled winter survival now serve protecting valuable human resources from enemy countermeasures. The psychological demands of leadership during wartime prove more challenging than simple survival requirements. Decisions that affect other people's lives, responsibility for operational outcomes, and moral weight of violence directed against human beings rather than abstract enemies. The resistance organization implements systematic training that prepares members for expanded military operations while maintaining the moral standards that justify their cause. Combat effectiveness must be balanced against ethical principles that preserve organizational legitimacy. Training protocols address both tactical skills and moral preparation for warfare. Marksmanship instruction includes rules of engagement that prevent unnecessary killing. Sabotage techniques emphasize military targets rather than civilian infrastructure. Intelligence operations maintain standards that protect non-combatant populations. Your family contributes to training through expertise in defensive construction and tactical coordination, but also through moral leadership that demonstrates how military effectiveness can coexist with humanitarian principles. The example of principled resistance helps other families navigate the moral complexities of warfare. The resistance network's expansion attracts attention from colonial authorities who recognize organized military capability that could support broader strategic objectives. Contact with regular military forces offers possibilities for coordination and support that could transform local resistance into regional military campaign, but cooperation with professional military organizations also brings risks of subordination that could eliminate civilian control over resistance objectives. The network must balance benefits of military support against preservation of independence that serves local community interests. The strategic situation continues evolving as enemy forces adapt to resistance operations while resistance capabilities expand through success and recruitment. The asymmetric conflict that began With survival, desperation has evolved into symmetrical warfare between organized military forces. Your family's transformation from victims to victors represents broader evolution that demonstrates how civilian populations can create effective military organizations when survival demands require organized resistance. The knowledge gained through desperate circumstances now serves strategic objectives that extend far beyond individual family survival. As summer approaches and enemy reinforcements arrive to counter resistance success, the organization faces challenges that will determine whether civilian resistance can evolve into effective military force or whether early victories represent temporary success that invites devastating retaliation. The science of revenge has proven effective in initial operations, but sustained military success requires evolution beyond vengeance to systematic warfare that achieves strategic objectives through disciplined application of violence rather than emotional satisfaction through inflicting suffering. The legacy of Iron and Will. 2 years have passed since that first arrow struck your cabin door, and you stand now on the charred foundation of your original homestead, surveying land that tells the story of transformation. The burned timbers have been cleared away, new logs are stacked nearby for reconstruction, and the cleared fields show signs of recent planting. But the most significant changes are invisible to casual observation. Your family has survived challenges that destroyed hundreds of other frontier families, not through luck or accident, but through systematic application of knowledge that transformed desperate circumstances into manageable problems. The security principles that seemed like excessive preparation before the attacks now appear as essential wisdom that made survival possible. The resistance network that grew from scattered refugees has evolved into regional defense organization that coordinates protection for dozens of settlements. Enemy forces, worn down by 2 years of systematic harassment and unable to maintain extended operations in hostile territory, have withdrawn to more defensible positions closer to their supply bases. Most importantly, the knowledge gained through survival has been documented, organized, and transmitted to other frontier families facing similar challenges. The journals that began with simple security preparations now contain comprehensive manuals for frontier defense, wilderness survival, and community resistance. David, now 10 years old and hardened by experiences that would break many adults, assists with the cabin reconstruction using skills learned during months of concealed survival. His competence with tools, understanding of defensive architecture, and mature appreciation for security measures reflect the transformation that frontier challenges create in children who survive them. Mary, at 7, demonstrates tracking abilities, plant identification skills, and concealment techniques that rival those of experienced scouts. Her knowledge represents adaptation to circumstances that required mastery of survival skills or death from ignorance. Martha has emerged from the crucible of frontier survival as a leader whose medical knowledge, organizational capability, and psychological strength make her invaluable to the expanding network of families working to establish permanent security in the region. But you understand that individual survival, while essential, represents only the foundation for the broader transformation that frontier challenges have created throughout the region. The systematic approaches to security, survival, and resistance developed by your family and others have evolved into community-wide capabilities that transcend individual family protection. The Regional Defense Network now coordinates security preparations among more than 60 homesteads spread across hundreds of square miles. Standardized alarm systems, coordinated patrol schedules, and mutual aid agreements create collective security that multiplies individual family capabilities. Communication systems connect isolated homesteads with regional centers, enabling rapid warning of threats and coordination of resources during emergencies. Signal networks, message relays, and rotating courier systems maintain contact across distances that previously isolated families from mutual support. Most importantly, knowledge sharing ensures that survival techniques, defensive innovations, and resistance methods spread throughout the frontier community. The hard-won lessons that enabled your family's survival become common knowledge that enhances everyone's security. The educational component has evolved, beyond simple knowledge transmission to systematic training. Programs that prepare frontier families for challenges they haven't yet faced. Combat training, medical instruction, and survival skills education create regional capability that transforms individual preparation into community readiness. Your family's contributions to this educational system include specialized training in concealment techniques, tunnel construction, and family-level defense coordination. The knowledge that enabled survival in desperate circumstances now helps other families prepare for challenges they hope never to face. But the most significant legacy lies in the psychological transformation that frontier challenges create in people who survive them. The mental discipline, systematic thinking, and cooperative spirit developed through survival become permanent characteristics that enhance all aspects of life. Children who master wilderness survival skills before adolescence demonstrate problem-solving abilities, self-reliance, and maturity that distinguish them from children raised in safer circumstances. Adults who coordinate family defense develop leadership capabilities that serve community organizations throughout their lives. Most importantly, families who survive extreme challenges together create bonds of trust and cooperation that strengthen community relationships and enhance collective capability for addressing future problems. The reconstruction of your homestead reflects this transformation from individual to community focus. The new cabin incorporates lessons learned from 2 years of survival while serving as demonstration site for defensive architecture that other families can study and adapt. The building techniques utilize improved materials and methods while maintaining the security principles that proved essential during previous challenges. Concealed firing ports, reinforced construction, and integrated alarm systems represent evolved approaches to frontier defense. Most importantly, the reconstruction process serves educational function that transfers knowledge to other families planning their own security improvements. Construction techniques, material selection, and defensive integration become shared knowledge that enhances regional security. The agricultural component of reconstruction emphasizes food security that could sustain extended periods of isolation or siege. Crop selection, preservation methods, and storage techniques reflect understanding that families must remain self-sufficient during extended emergencies. Hidden storage systems, concealed root cellars, and distributed cache networks ensure that food security doesn't depend on single points of failure that enemy action or natural disaster could eliminate. Redundancy and concealment protect essential resources. The water system incorporates multiple sources, backup supplies, and concealed access that could function even if primary systems were compromised. The underground spring that sustained survival now serves permanent installation that ensures reliable water under all circumstances. But perhaps the most important legacy lies in the documentation and transmission of knowledge that could help future frontier families facing similar challenges. The journals that began with simple security notes now comprise comprehensive manuals that cover every aspect of frontier survival. The documentation includes detailed instructions for defensive construction, concealment techniques, wilderness survival, medical procedures, and resistance operations. Most importantly, it addresses the psychological and organizational challenges that often prove more difficult than physical hardships. The knowledge transmission system ensures that this information reaches families who need it most. Distribution through regional networks, training programs, and educational systems makes survival knowledge available to frontier communities throughout the expanding territory. Your family's story has become part of frontier legend that inspires other families while providing practical guidance for security preparation. The specific techniques that enabled survival offer concrete examples that families can study, adapt, and implement according to their circumstances. As you stand among the foundations of your rebuilt homestead, watching your children play games that unconsciously practice survival skills, you realize that the greatest victory isn't simply having survived desperate circumstances, but having transformed those circumstances into knowledge that helps others survive. The security systems that began as desperate improvisation have evolved into systematic approaches that make frontier life safer for all families willing to learn and implement proven techniques. The individual struggle has become community capability that transcends any single family's circumstances. Most importantly, the psychological transformation from victims to victors, from reactive survivors to proactive preparers, represents fundamental change in how frontier families approach security challenges. Instead of hoping dangers won't come, families now systematically prepare for threats while working to eliminate them through coordinated action. The frontier continues to present challenges that test human endurance, ingenuity, and cooperation, but families armed with systematic knowledge, proven techniques, and community support face those challenges with capabilities that make survival not just possible, but probable for those willing to apply lessons learned through blood and determination. Your children will inherit not just a rebuilt homestead, but the knowledge and community relationships that enabled its reconstruction. They'll face their own challenges with advantages that previous generations couldn't imagine. Systematic security knowledge, community support networks, and psychological preparation that transforms challenges into opportunities for growth rather than tests of simple endurance. This is the true legacy of frontier protection, not just individual survival, but the creation of knowledge systems that transform isolated struggle into community strength. The security principles that began with desperate improvisation have evolved into proven methodologies that make frontier life survivable for families willing to learn and apply systematic approaches to protection. The rebuilt homestead serves as more than just a residence. It functions as a training center where other frontier families can study advanced defensive techniques, practice survival skills, and learn from experience that cost blood to acquire. The defensive innovations that saved your family now serve the broader community through education and example. The children playing in your rebuilt yard represent the ultimate victory over forces that sought to eliminate frontier settlement entirely. Their laughter echoes across land that witnessed desperate survival, and their games unconsciously practice skills that might one day save their own families. As evening approaches and you gather your family for the evening meal in your rebuilt home, you reflect on the transformation that frontier challenges have created in everyone who survived them. The people who fled burning homesteads 2 years ago bear little resemblance to the confident individuals who now serve as regional leaders in frontier protection. Your family's journey from desperate survival to community leadership continues, and the knowledge systems you've helped create will serve frontier families for generations to come. The legacy of iron and will endures, stronger than ever, ready for whatever challenges the frontier may present. This is the ultimate achievement, transforming individual survival into collective strength, temporary desperation into permanent capability, and personal tragedy into community triumph. The frontier protection systems that began with one family's desperate fight for survival have become the foundation for an entire region's security and prosperity. The work continues, but the foundation is solid. Knowledge preserved, community established, and future secured through the systematic application of lessons learned in humanity's darkest hours. Your family's story has become America's story. The transformation of wilderness into civilization through courage, ingenuity, and the determination to not just survive, but to build something better from the ashes of what was lost. The end.